on a disk, floating through space, with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm FTFE and welcome back to the channel that does to stupidity what Warner Brothers just did to the staff rota at DC Comics. Tonight is a change from the normal pace on this channel. We're not going to have a crayon munching moron claim that the Earth is a magic frisbee. Instead, we're going to have a intelligent discussion about global warming. I'm really looking forward to this. Honestly, it's something that is definitely a refreshing change of pace, and it's probably well needed for people that have a normal level of IQ, like me and Team. Well, me anyway. Talking about Team, how you doing, Team?
I'm doing pretty good. Here to learn some shit and hearing a change of pace. Exactly what you were saying. You know, I'm looking forward to it.
So Team and I are just going to kind of look after the show tonight. I'll be producing, getting slides and stuff up. Team will probably be on the chat talking to you guys. I don't imagine there'd be much moderation needed because both the guys seem intelligent enough to have a civilized conversation. First of all, let's introduce someone you've seen on the channel a few times, PhD Tony. Welcome back to the channel, Tony. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Always a pleasure to have you on. Like I said, you are my spirit animal. I wish I was just half as smart as you are. And this is a conversation I'm very much looking forward to. In case people don't know who you are, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself, tell people a bit about yourself, what it is you're doing here on YouTube, and what it is you do in real life?
So I'm a research geophysicist. I do research on geophysical processes, how the Earth deforms and how its rotation and gravity fields change in response to the application of surface loads. In particular, we discussed the Earth response to the large-scale ice sheets of the last glacial cycle. For me, climate science was something that was peripheral, but given that the debate won't go away, I spent a couple of years studying climate science in detail and started trying to slap down climate denialists on YouTube, which is when I came across flat earthers and realized that this rabbit hole of counter-science went a lot deeper than I had previously appreciated.
Well, awesome. So you are quite well educated, as a lot of people know. Do you mind just telling people a bit about your credentials?
Yeah, I have an honours degree in mathematics. My honours topic was on geomagnetism, determining the conductivity of Earth's interior. My PhD focus was on developing high-resolution techniques for modelling Earth deformation in response to surface loads, as a result of which I adapted I was actually using flat Earth formalism to model these processes over very short length scales.
God, don't say that.
Adapted some seismological techniques.
You know they're going to clip that, right, and say that you use flat Earth.
Yeah, I do know they're going to clip that, but it's the reality. And the truth is that I know very well that they don't work on a global scale. If they want to use that, they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Oh yeah, but they never realise that. But no, it's a pleasure to have you on, Tony. Thank you very much for taking part in this debate. You guys can find a link to Tony's channel in the description of this debate. Now, the other guest we have on today is someone new to the channel. His name is Bart K. Bart, welcome to the channel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Vite. Thank you very much for having me on. It is an honour. I am new, I guess, in terms of the discussions and debates around things like the shape of our Earth. It is an oblate spheroid, absolutely, clearly, without question. My particular background is in physiology, human physiology and pathophysiology. My thesis is around cardiovascular pathophysiology, aka atherosclerosis, heart disease. Secondary to that, I have interests in human nutrition, which my primary YouTube channel concerns itself with. and I have a brand new shiny channel called It's Round Like, which is my channel where I'll be talking about physics and things, which is one of the subjects that I studied variously. Most of my physics is self-taught at the quantum level, but in terms of classical physics and all of that, pretty well schooled on that. And my interest in climate science, such that it is around trying to keep the debates going. I'm against the idea that settled science should be considered so until such time as you've got something that is absolutely irrefutable. So over a 20-year academic career, I've always looked for the antithesis of every argument. So I've searched the literature to find what's available in there. And today, my position, well, the position I'm taking for this structured discussion, this debate, is that there are reasons to question the currently prevailing dogma regarding anthropogenic global warming being caused by greenhouse gas. I'm taking that position for this debate, and I'll be presenting the work of others. And as such, my personal opinion is actually not relevant here. What I'm doing is presenting a case which has already been published, and I'll present that to the best of my ability, and then hopefully we can have a discussion with Tony, who is more of a physicist than I am, who may be able to point to some of the flaws in it, and then it will be educational for everybody. But that's kind of where it was, and obviously the thing that motivated me to want to do this in the first place was to make myself known, I guess, to the globe community. I'm already reasonably well known in the nutrition area, but obviously being a brand newcomer to the globe discussion, I thought that would be a great way to get on the best flat earth channel there is. Fight, that's yours.
Thank you very much.
And no, not at all. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this, and that's where I'm at. So there you go.
Awesome.
That's me.
Thank you. You can find links to both Bart's channels in the channel in the description of this debate. His channel where he talks about nutrition and stuff's got about 14,000 subscribers. His relatively new flat Earth debunking channel and physics general channel, It's Round Like, has about 400. So if you feel like it, guys, feel free to go and subscribe. So what we're going to do is we're going to let Tony start off by outlining his and I guess the consensus around global warming. And you know, his understanding of it, and then we can go into your slides and stuff you've sent me about holding the opposite position. So let's just get into this. Tony, over to you. I've got that video that you sent me if you need to refer to it.
Okay, I just want to start with the general mission statement. The debate over the cause of the increase in Earth's mean surface temperature over the past 150 years is as current as the debate over the shape of the Earth. To maintain a contrary position is no less anti-scientific, but vastly more dangerous. This has to the uneducated, uninitiated person, it may seem like there's some details left to be ironed out. This is completely untrue. The physics here started 200 years ago, well before general relativity was even a gleam in somebody's eye, well before the theory of evolution, well before plate tectonics. This is old, established science, and it has survived more than 70 years of active and aggressive attack by the mainstream science community before it came out on top. So the fact, you know, it may seem to people outside the discipline that this is a fairly recent innovation that they'd never heard of before, and therefore it was recently developed. No, it was developed a long time ago, and it was attacked vigorously. It has been destruction tested, and it has come through observation as our observational ability has improved. I feel quite passionate about this because by the time there is incontestable evidence that this is going to result in hundreds of millions of deaths, it will be far too late to prevent them. And so this is quite a dangerous topic. I cannot emphasize enough just how great the risk of loss of life and loss of resources is. With that said, let's get into the video.
All right, one sec. Let me just get that up. I did have it prepared, and then I just deleted the input, so I need to get it back. One sec. And it's at the timestamp you need, isn't it?
Well, if you just play it, I can. If you just start at say 1 minute, I'll and we can go in at say 1 minute increments. I think that should be enough.
Does it need?
It doesn't need the audio. Just
Right, okay.
bring up the slides and I'll discuss what's going on.
All right, one sec.
So just there's nothing moving in it. It's just a series of slides. So just pause it.
Okay, right. Sorry, just getting that up now. Web browser.
No problem. Okay, if you could go back like 30, if you could go back, yeah, again, just go back to the previous slide. Yep, here we go. So, if you could go back just a little bit earlier, just to the previous slide. Yeah, here we go. So, the story that I'm about to describe starts in 1827 with the work of a guy by the name of Joseph Fourier, who was a French mathematician who developed much of the formalism that is still used to model heat transport. For those of you with mathematical backgrounds, he developed the Fourier transform and the Fourier series as well, after whom they named. In 1827, he wrote a thesis on the temperature of the Earth, and he asked a very basic question with very profound implications, and that question was, based on energy received from the sun, what should Earth's mean surface temperature be? And that's the question that we're going to address for the first little while. If you could go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so Earth obviously receives energy from the sun, and by conservation of energy, it must re-radiate that. If it radiates less energy than it receives from the sun, then it's going to heat up until it is hot enough to radiate the energy it receives from the sun. If it radiates too much more energy than it receives from the sun, it's going to cool down until it reaches equilibrium. So basically, in an equilibrium state, which the Earth can be assumed to have reached, the Earth is going to radiate as much energy as it receives from the sun. Now, I should say here that I'm not following Fourier's analysis because there's a lot of physics that Fourier and his contemporaries didn't know. But Fourier came to the same conclusion I'm going to come to in a minute. But he had to use very clever observational techniques based around observations of the moon and very careful analysis of atmospheric effects. But the modern approach is to use conservation of energy, and this formula here, En. So the energy received from the sun is 1 minus A times S pi r squared. Now, pi r squared is just the cross-sectional area of the planet that is intercepting energy from the sun. S is the solar energy, and A is albedo. This is another important term. It's the amount of energy that just gets bounced back to space, that just gets reflected. So that energy doesn't reach Earth's surface and can't heat it up. So that's the energy in. Next slide. Energy out is more complicated. This is the Stefan-Boltzmann equation. 4 pi r squared is the surface area of a sphere. Every point on the surface of the sphere is radiating energy outwards. Sigma is the Stefan-Boltzmann constant, which can be determined by observation, and TE is what's called the effective emission temperature. Now, it's the only thing in these two equations that we don't know. We know sigma, we know pi, we know r. The pi r squared terms actually cancel out anyway. We know that albedo is about 0.3. We can use a more precise result. It doesn't change what's going on. and we know the energy flux at our distance from the sun. Okay, so using those, we can plug in and we can get that the effective emission temperature is about 255 Kelvin, which is minus 18 degrees centigrade or 0 Fahrenheit. And that's a surprising result. It certainly surprised Fourier when he developed it from observations. And so the question is, why, have we screwed up? Have we messed up? Is our theory wrong? Can we go along to the next slide, please? Because what we observe is that actually the surface temperature is closer to, that's the one, is closer to 288 Kelvin, or 59 Fahrenheit, or 15 degrees Celsius. So there's a 33 degrees Celsius difference. But when we threw up satellites outside the top of Earth's atmosphere, and we turned infrared cameras downwards, we were able to see that the Earth is emitting energy at a rate consistent with the Earth's temperature being 255 Kelvin. So we were able to observationally validate the result that we just obtained from theory. So what's going on? Next slide, please. Well, we can also do the same calculation for Venus. I forgot what order these are in. But Venus has an effective emission temperature of 178 Kelvin, but a surface temperature of an eye-watering 740 degrees Kelvin. That makes Venus 200 degrees warmer than Mercury, despite the fact that Mercury is very, very close to the sun. So despite the fact that it's much further away, Venus is much, much warmer. And that's despite Venus having a really high albedo. So Venus is reflecting the vast majority of the energy it receives from the sun back into space. So it should actually be quite cold, but its surface temperature is quite high. Go along to the next slide, please. So just a shout out, because I know there are many fans of this guy in the audience, the person who did the radiative transfer modeling of the Venusian atmosphere was actually Carl Sagan, and his predictions on this matter were confirmed. Were confirmed by the Venera satellites, the Russian satellites that made it into the Venusian atmosphere. So Carl Sagan used the theory that I'm about to outline to you to predict atmospheric temperature profiles, and once we knew the appropriate parameters to plug in, he was shown to be correct. Could you go on to the next slide, please? So what's going on? Why is this a problem? Why is this occurring? And so if we look at a high satellite outside Earth's atmosphere that is looking down towards Earth's surface, in the visible light spectrum, it can see all the way down to Earth's surface with no problem, because the Earth is transparent. The Earth's atmosphere is transparent to visible light. But in the infrared spectrum, that's not true. You're not going to see the surface from a satellite outside the atmosphere. You're only going to see what's called one optical thickness in the IR spectrum into the atmosphere, and so you're only going to see as far as that red line. And on the modern Earth, that red line is at an altitude of about 6.5 kilometers. So if you go too high into if your satellite is too high, you don't see the surface. You only see as far as that height. If you could go on to the next slide, please. Yep. So now we can work out what's going on. If you make the atmosphere more opaque to infrared, then the satellite can't see as far into it, and that effective emission height, HE, moves higher in the atmosphere. It moves upwards. But because temperature increases with decreasing altitude in the troposphere, by moving that horizon upwards, you must increase surface temperature. It is an inevitable consequence. So if you make the atmosphere more opaque to infrared radiation, or radiation in the infrared spectrum, then you must increase surface temperature. So the only question is carbon dioxide opaque to infrared. Let's go on to the next slide, please. And this is where the spectrographers come in, and with spectroscopic analysis, there's a lot of effort that goes into detailing all of the gas species that are present in Earth's atmosphere and determining their radiative transfer properties. These properties are catalogued and regularly updated in the HitRAN database, and this HitRAN database is then observationally validated against atmospheric readings and found to be accurate. Next slide, please. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. This is the black body radiation curve. This is a curve of black body radiation that might be emitted. Now that red curve is what we would expect if the Earth were radiating at its approximate surface temperature. But that blue curve is what is actually observed, and you can see that the peak of that blue curve is slightly lower and to the right. So it's emitting more lower frequency radiation, and it's emitting less of it because it's cooler. Now you can see, however, that the observational, that observed curve, that blue curve, is actually really, really jagged and has gaps missing into it. That is due to the absorption of infrared by gases inside the atmosphere. If we can go to the next slide, please. So here's the theoretical. We use the observed absorption and emission characteristics of the various gases in the atmosphere. We use a sophisticated radiative transfer model, and we plug the observed boundary conditions into it, and we solve for the emission characteristics of Earth. That's that black line, and you can see that it's very much like that curve in the previous slide. The different colored curves show the case where we've omitted various IR absorbing gases. So the red line is if we leave out water. The cyan line is if we leave out carbon dioxide, and there are also other ones: ozone, methane, nitrogen dioxide, or N2O. We can see that water vapor and carbon dioxide are the dominant effects that are modifying the emission curve that is observed at the top of the atmosphere. And we can see that our understanding of the physics of this system agrees very well with the observations. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so here's a plot of global mean surface temperature and solar activity since 1880. And you can see that global mean surface temperature has increased sharply despite a general decreasing trend in solar activity. So clearly something is causing this temperature to rise. Can we determine what the source of this heating is? If you go on to the next slide. Okay, over the same time period, we have seen a significant increase in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, really detailed observations began in the late 1950s, early 1960s, with the establishment of the Mauna Loa Observatory, and this is called the Keeling curve, after Charles Keeling, and I think his son is still working on this. But this is the carbon dioxide curve. So we have observed an increase in a significant increase in a greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. We expect to see a temperature rise as a result. We do see a temperature rise. Is that temperature rise consistent with what we expect from greenhouse forcing? Let's go on to the next slide. It turns out that there are ways to test this, and one of the ways to test it is by looking at what's called diurnal asymmetry in global warming. And all that means is that because we're changing the rate at which heat can leave the atmosphere, where we expect nights to get warmer faster than days do. Days get warm because of the amount of light they receive from the sun. Nights get cold. But if you slow down the rate at which they lose heat, they'll get hotter faster. So if you go to the next slide. And that's exactly what is observed. You can see that. So in this slide, the bottom two panels are the ones to look at. That middle panel, the second panel, shows the increase in maximum daily temperature. That bottom panel shows the increase in nighttime temperature, and you can see that the nighttime temperature is increasing faster than the daytime temperature is. That top is the difference between the maximum and the minimum temperature, and because the lower temperature is increasing faster than the higher temperature, you can see that that difference is decreasing. Next slide. I'm almost finished. Sorry for going on. The other thing that we can do is we can look at what's happening in the stratosphere. Now, for complicated reasons involving radiative transfer theory and more efficient emission in the IR spectrum, we expect if the surface is being warmed by a greenhouse effect, we expect the stratosphere to actually get colder. So we can, and that's exactly what's observed. So can we go along to the next slide? So here's the observation. Here's observational evidence of what's happening in the stratosphere during the satellite era, and you can see that there is a noticeable decline in stratospheric temperature, exactly as predicted by the greenhouse theory. So again, the greenhouse theory is validated. Anyway, that's the end of the presentation, effectively. Sorry, can I hear you?
My bad, I didn't unmute myself. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Tony. Very, very thorough. I do appreciate that. I know it's going to be strange for a lot of people watching. They're going to be like, "Where's the stupid people? I don't understand."
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. That was quite dry. Not really the level that we usually aim at around here, but I hope it was informative nonetheless.
Oh, I do appreciate that. Thank you, team. Any thoughts on that before we go over to Bart?
Nope, sounded good.
Cool.
Followed along well. It was well presented, and yeah, good job, Tony.
Thank you very much. Well, obviously that's the position that Tony is holding today. Bart obviously has a presentation put together now for his position. Bart, over to you.
Okie dokie. So first of all, I want to thank Tony for his presentation and for his passion regarding the subject area. My position today is that while I may or may not hold an opinion on this topic myself, that is not my role here today. My role is to present to the best of my ability some information that has been made available by others, and I'm talking about the research team in Dublin over there, who are Doctors Connolly and Connolly, who in 2014 published a series of papers in a journal which is an open peer review journal. Now, for those that aren't aware of what that is, it's a slightly different take on the peer review process, whereby the authors prepare their manuscript, it is published, and then the peer review process begins and remains open for all time, actually. And people are free at any time to submit corrections, point to any errors that may be there, question those authors. It's an ongoing discussion rather than a one-off, let's send this off to 2 peer reviewers, let's get their take on it, swing it back by the editor, published, done deal. No, this is an ongoing discussion type of peer review system, which I found quite attractive as an idea, because I'm always about, as I said before, I'm always about continuing these discussions and not just accepting that science is settled until we've got some really good first principles, like, oh, you know, triangles and stuff like that. Triangles work quite well, actually. They are a first principle. No one's ever debunked a triangle. So
Sleeping Warrior would disagree.
Well, I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would. But no, triangles are a thing. As is climate change. Climate change is a thing. The climate does change. Tony has eloquently and passionately put forward the argument, the prevailing dogma regarding the cause of any current trend in our global mean surface temperature. I don't disagree with any of the physics that he has presented there personally, but I was very interested in what Doctors Connolly and Connolly had to say in 2014, and I'm also very, very interested in the fact that those papers, having been available now for the best part of 6 years, anybody want to guess exactly how many corrections, questions, review from anybody in physics whatsoever had on any of the 3 papers? I'll save you looking. The answer is none. None at all. Not one single correction has been offered. Not one single objection has been made to what the Doctors Connolly had to say. Now, as I said at the start, disclaimer, I am not a climate physicist. I am a physiologist first and foremost, and a pathophysiologist and a nutritionist. And I have a great deal of expertise in data analysis, statistics, and all of those kind of things as well. And a side interest in the physics of climate and you know, in general, in terms of the shape of our planet and all of that kind of stuff, and relativity and all of that. So those that kind of doubt my ability to comprehend that kind of material in terms of the physics, perhaps you'd like to go and have a look at some of the videos on my channel about that. It's called It's Round Like. It's round like. Where actually Professor Yellow Ted runs the show over there. He's in charge. And I'm just his mouthpiece, but that's well worth a look, I think, and hopefully you'll get something from that. So, if we could have that being said, if we could have the slide presentation. There we go. Perhaps we could go. So the references there to the Connolly papers are up at the top of the screen there. You can certainly go and digest those for yourselves, and I suggest you do, people, because they really are incredibly fascinating. This presentation is my best effort as a non-climate physicist to synthesize the message that I think they are trying to give. So please forgive me if I get anything wrong. And Tony, do please, after this, give us some really thorough feedback if you can on what it seems that Connolly and Connolly are saying. I would appreciate that very much. For my own interest and education on the topic, if that's lacking. So if we skip to the first slide there, Fight, if that's okay. So basically, what we're looking at here is what's called the US Standard Atmosphere, which is a mid-latitude representation of the temperature of our atmosphere, starting at ground level at the bottom on the x-axis, and as we go up through the y-axis, obviously we get higher and higher in altitude, and the black line there that kind of looks like a strange stylized E is the temperature at various altitudes as determined by various methodologies. So there's kind of a standard slip rate in the temperature of our atmosphere that has been described, and they generally suggest that is approximately 6.5 Kelvin per kilometre of elevation. And the explanation for that is the transformation, if you like, of the thermal energy contained in those molecules in the atmosphere being changed into gravitational potential energy as we go up higher in the gravitational field. Obviously, the troposphere is the I guess the so-called shell of the atmosphere in which we basically live and conduct our daily lives. In actual fact, we all move around pretty much at surface level most of the time, don't we? But the first 15 kilometers, now that's an average global number. Of course, it does change depending on your latitude and also season, by the way. But the troposphere is that part of our atmosphere which is thought to be mixing, moving, active. It has weather. As it turns out, most of that weather occurs in the boundary layer, which is the first 1 to 2 kilometers in altitude. After that, there's actually very little weather.
Oh, have we lost him there? Bart seems to have gone quiet.
Like it.
Yeah, looks like his camera is frozen. It says his call is still connected. I'll message him on Facebook a sec, get him to refresh the call. That was going quite well. Give me one sec. Oh, it says he's not online. Aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens, guys, but
that's weird.
It's aliens. Oh no, it says he's online on Facebook. Oh, Tony's just disconnected as well. Are we still live? What's going on?
Oh fuck, am I next? Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It seems to be still live.
Okay.
Did like that part of the world just get destroyed by aliens, or?
Yeah, no fucking shit, right? They both come from the same fucking side of the world that doesn't exist, you know?
Oh, Tony's back. That's one.
Sorry, yeah, tried to unmute myself and disconnected the call.
Okay, well, whilst we wait for Bart to reconnect, I'm going to read out the few super chats I've had. Jessica G for $2 says, "Hey FTFE, Tony, Bart, and the ugly guy on the top left."
Hey,
Oh,
Jessica.
that's me.
Yeah, luckily he's not showing his face today, guys. He didn't want to offend you. Taco5150 for $2 says, "Thanks for the great content destroying Flerfs. I love it, and I'm not going to stop. So thank you for the super chat." Jessica G for $2 says, "Bart, where did you get that Scanner Darkly filter?" And then Jessica G for $2 says, "Bart is doing mocap for Golden Axwell debating." That's quite. And McCabe Malafika for $10 Australian says, "Mr. K, given that Arrhenius postulated ACC in the 19th century during the Industrial Revolution and that it has been demonstrated as correct for nearly 150 years, are you also an anti-vaxxer, young Earth creationist?" No, I don't think he is, but we can ask him that question when he gets back. Faux Hammer.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, go on, Tony.
No, go on. No, go on.
Faux Hammer 335 for $5 says, "Craig's internet is as good as Team is at video games, so not very good." It doesn't appear to be my problem. Yeah. So
No.
what were you going to say, Tony?
Well, I was going to explain that, and perhaps So, as Macabre mentioned, sort of Svante Arrhenius, who was a Nobel Prize winner from the late 19th century, first proposed the idea that carbon dioxide played a role in the glacial cycles, like the advance and retreats of the ice sheets. But he also proposed that if humans emitted enough CO2, they could change the climate. And basically, mainstream science kicked the shit out of this idea. They thought that there was too much water vapor for CO2 to be able to do anything, and B, the ocean would suck up all the CO2 instantly, and it wouldn't be around long enough to be able to do anything. And it turns out that both those hypotheses are wrong, but it took us a while to get instruments accurate enough to understand it. So actually this thesis spent 60, 70 years being regarded as a crackpot lunatic idea that no serious climate scientist actually took seriously. So, but it survived. The data eventually became more accurate, more detailed, and our understanding of the processes involved became more complete.
I think Bart's coming back in now.
Okay.
All right. Bart, you there?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Sorry, yes, you disconnected for some reason. Not
Okay,
that,
no, it wasn't me doing that.
wonders of internet.
Where did we get up to? Where did we get up to?
We were still on the first slide, I believe.
Right, how far down that slide did I get before
I think you were talking about how we are spending most of our daily lives around in the troposphere.
Right, okay, so, yeah, right, so the troposphere, about 15 kilometres at the equator, only about 7.5 thick at the poles. Then you have a tropopause, which goes up pretty much globally to around 20,000 meters, which is kind of an interesting thing in and of itself. That would be so. The slip rate obviously then ceases at the tropopause, hence the term tropopause, and there is several kilometers, depending on your latitude, of no change in the temperature of the atmosphere as a function of altitude. After that, we have the stratosphere, where there's a biphasic increase in temperature. The slip rate becomes positive, more slowly at first and then more rapidly above basically the top of the ozone layer, which is at around about 35,000 meters altitude, followed by another pause and then a negative slip rate and then another pause and then a vast increase in the temperature in what's called the thermosphere, basically above the Kármán line, where you'll find temperatures getting up pretty quickly to around 2,500 Kelvin at those altitudes, which of course wouldn't feel like 2,000 Kelvin if you were able to have bare skin at that altitude. There is so little atmosphere there that there's really nothing to conduct that heat from it to you so much, and so you wouldn't even get burned or feel like it was even hot. But nonetheless, it's 2,000 degrees, and that's what the generalized standard atmosphere shows. So next slide, if you please, Fight. Alrighty, so the assumptions that are generally made there, according to Doctors Connolly, is that conduction is assumed to be a negligible means of energy transfer from place to place in the atmosphere, which they claim to be probably a fair assumption because air is a poor conductor. Fine. Vertical convection is assumed because hot air is always less dense than cooler air, is the argument. Horizontal convection is assumed to be important, but really only in the troposphere where the weather and stuff is where it's actually happening. The mean atmospheric temperature profiles are assumed to be influenced mostly by radiative transfer. It's a radiative model, and that's exactly what Tony was talking about very eloquently earlier on, it being a radiative model that is the predominant or prevailing model that is being used in climate science today. There is an important factor, which is a phase change, i.e. evaporation and condensation of water vapor, which mostly occurs in the boundary layer, i.e. the first 1 or 2 kilometers in altitude, after which the air is pretty dry, and so that becomes non-important beyond that level. Greenhouse gases are proposed via the currently prevailing dogma to slow the rate of infrared radiative cooling, basically by storing infrared energy in exactly the manner that Tony showed with the absorption spectra there. And there's no argument. That's exactly what those particular greenhouse gas molecules do. They absorb infrared radiation, they store it for a period of time, which is largely stochastic in nature, and then that energy is re-emitted after that time. So that's kind of the prevailing idea. That's pretty much exactly what Tony said, as far as I can make out. And it's, you know, I'm not arguing with it. It's Connolly and Connolly that have come up with their ideas. So let's move on and see what it is they did. Next slide, if you please. Alrighty, so the actual paper, the Connolly and Connolly paper, the first one, at that stage they didn't have the number of radio songs logged that they now do. If you go to their website and follow, you know, where they're up to now, currently they have more than 20 million data sets of radio songs. In other words, weather balloons that were launched at ground level and went up through the atmosphere to roughly 35 kilometers before bursting. And on the way up, they recorded all sorts of interesting things like temperature, pressure, derived altitude, wind speed and direction. Yeah, all that kind of bizzo that scientists love to look at. What they did is they took all those 20 million data sets and they have expressed the relationship between the molar density of the atmosphere and the pressure of the atmosphere, which is usually thought to be largely analogous to altitude. However, that is apparently problematic above the troposphere. Once you get to the tropopause, that can become problematic. That's a bit of an aside, but it was just an interesting point. What they found when they did that is that kind of chaotic waving backwards and forwards line that we saw on the earlier two slides resolves to very much more a straight line. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. That's the wavy backwards and forwards. And obviously individual radio sondes for the first 35 kilometers there, they do vary quite a bit from day to day and from place to place, latitude to latitude, and also via the season. They're really quite, I mean, they're shown there as straight lines, but it actually is really quite chaotic and quite difficult to make head nor tail of. But when they made when Connolly and Connolly made the calculations as to the molar density of the atmosphere as a function of the pressure of the atmosphere, it resolved the situation to basically straight line relationships. And they found a biphasic nature at night and a triphasic nature during the day. So if we won't go to the next slide quite yet. The relationship that Connolly and Connolly have shown, if you go back to the next slide, if you don't mind there, Fight. The relationship they found, that the straight line relationships that they found, do not depend on the speciation of gases. However, the particular slope and intercepts of these lines that we'll see in a minute do depend on latitude, season, and a few other factors like humidity-related events, rain events, those kind of things. And in their paper, they are reporting a hitherto unreported phase change in the atmospheric gas identified at the top of the troposphere at the exact point pretty much where the tropopause begins. And I'll explain that a bit more in a minute. So if you go to the next slide for me, Fight, that would be appreciated. What we're looking at here is the slip rate from one of these radio sondes. It just happens to be the 23rd of May 2011, and it was launched at Albany, New York. And here we have what they're looking at there is a two-phase regime, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute, where you have a light phase of the atmospheric gas, which is in the phase that we would all recognise atmospheric gas to be, and a heavy phase, which they are proposing is explainable by multimerization of the atmospheric gases above a certain point, which then causes the slip rate to change there chaotically at first at the very beginning there of the tropopause, but then we see the increasing slip rate that we saw on the earlier graph there. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so here we have a triphasic, so that's most likely a daytime series there, and you've actually got 7 consecutive radiosondes launched from the same site over a couple of days there between the 23rd and 26th of May 2011, and the molar density is plotted as a function of the pressure of the atmosphere. Now, region 3 on the right-hand side, that is the boundary layer. That is where most of the moisture-related or humidity-related events are. That's where the weather is. There's a sort of a chaoticness there. There is quite a bit of variation there in the slope function and the intercept with the y-axis in those particular regression lines, if you like. Above that, region 2, that is the troposphere, basically, whereby you'll see remarkably similar results from radiosonde to radiosonde from day to day in that one site. And then region 1 is the altitude above the troposphere there. That's where the tropopause begins, where that phase change there can be seen. And obviously it all heads towards there being no molar density and no pressure at its origin. Pretty much that's what they have noted for every single one of the more than 20 million radiosondes they have now subjected to this analysis. The only difference between one radiosonde and another from time to time and from latitude to latitude and by season really is the presence or absence of region 3 occurring at all and its particular level of chaoticness on the basis of the moisture that's involved there. And the other thing that changes pretty much is the point at which the change in phase occurs. In other words, at what pressure, i.e. roughly at what altitude, does that phase change occur? And if we go to the next slide, I haven't actually embedded it here. Apologies, I was up late, very late last night, my time arranging all of this. There is a YouTube video there. There is the URL for that. And if you look at the period 33:02 through to 34 minutes and 5 seconds, that will show basically all the radiosondes launched from that particular same point, the same station, I should say, over a year. And you'll see what happens. There we go. So that we're now looking at that same graph we were looking at before. It's now turned 90 degrees so that ground level is at the bottom. And the line there is the altitude at which the tropopause begins. These are all the different radiosondes from one station launched in the year of 2018. So there's a great deal of variability there. What they've also done there is they've used the nighttime radiosondes to show that, so that the third phase, the boundary layer phase thing, is not so doesn't confuse the issue, basically. So what we have there is a phase change characterized by a multimerization of the gas molecules, and the particular molecule that is thought to be involved here is O2. So pretty much that was what we needed to see there. Thank you for that fight. If we move on to the next slide now. So basically, that was paper one, and what they have shown there is that there is clearly a phase change occurring because the molar density changes abruptly at a certain point. That altitude being variable depending on conditions. In paper two, what Connolly and Connolly have argued is that the mechanism is the multimerization of O2 into dimers and trimers and all those kind of things, and then possibly an involvement also in nitrogen, which may also be able to displace some of the oxygens and become involved as well. The inelastic interaction between those gas molecules at that phase change, after that phase change, basically leads to the emission of microwave emission. I can't remember the exact frequency that they were talking about, but largely those microwaves are then reabsorbed by the surrounding molecules. That heat excites the IR active molecules, which then emit IR, and because that's at such a high altitude and there's very little atmosphere above, that then escapes to space, is what Connolly and Connolly seem to be suggesting. They're also saying that this is an alternate explanation for the ozone heating, which is usually ascribed to incoming UV. And they have also said that the ozone heating hypothesis fails for a number of reasons, including the question that they asked is, why is the tropopause thickest at the poles, where the infrared radiation is the lowest, and thinnest at the equator, where it is the highest? The release of energy via the condensation of gas molecules in this hitherto undescribed phase change seems to be the thing that may well be releasing such heat, and as such may well be a thing which could well be a thermodynamic equilibrium event between the troposphere and the tropopause. If we move to the next slide, fight. So the take-home message from the second paper there from Connolly and Connolly was that if a gas obeys ideal gas laws, then it is in thermodynamic equilibrium by definition. The molar density calculations that they undertook, those sums are a direct derivative of the ideal gas laws. They come directly from those original equations. The molar density versus pressure charts that they have produced for more than 20 million data sets show an R-squared value of 0.9997. So it looks like a pretty damn good model. They've shown that the molar density function is biphasic at night and triphasic during the day. The slopes and intercepts vary from day to day, even from hour to hour, actually, and also by latitude. They are not meaningfully affected, apparently, by greenhouse gas concentrations whatsoever, which they back up by showing that the relationship that they have shown here with molar density, some of those radiosondes go back to 1950, for example, 1950. And the relationship holds true back then as it does today. There has been no change in those molar density calculations as a function of increasing carbon dioxide concentration in our atmosphere. It's also interesting that the phase boundary coincides with the tropopause every single time over 20 million data sets without meaningful deviation from that whatsoever. The phase boundaries move in terms of the pressure at which they occur, in other words, basically the altitude. Typically, those tropopause lines can move up and down through the atmosphere by 20% of the mass of the atmosphere within a 12-hour time period, which Connolly and Connolly have suggested is part of the mechanism by which the thermodynamic equilibrium between the troposphere and the tropopause is indeed maintained. And the heat, therefore, has a transfer mechanism across all altitudes from the stratosphere downward. In other words, heat in, heat out, as per the Einsteinian the Einsteinian formulation on that, basically. Next slide. Okie dokie, the third and final paper, again, this is my very parsimonious synthesis of all of this stuff, so apologies for that. Basically, in paper 3, experimentally, what Connolly and Connolly have done, they have shown that a mechanical heat transfer via pervection occurs in air, and that it occurs with a rate which is orders of magnitude quicker than either conduction, convection, or radiation via the standardly understood mechanisms of heat transfer in our atmosphere. And I mean 3 orders of magnitude quicker is what they're talking about. So Connolly and Connolly have said that the atmosphere is definitely in thermodynamic equilibrium from the tropopause right through to the stratosphere, i.e. the average energy content of the particles is the same throughout the system. Energy change in one part of the system causes other parts of the system to change in response to that, i.e. it's Le Chatelier's principle again, isn't it? Pervection is the mechanism, according to Connolly and Connolly, which they've shown with all their working in math and stuff, if people want to read those papers. For those that don't know what pervection is, because it's not spoken about at all in the radiative, conductive, convective model that we currently holds sway, it's a through mass work transfer mechanism as opposed to a with mass transfer mechanism. An analogy, a good analogy, or perhaps not a good analogy, but the one they give is the Newton's cradle analogy. They've set up an experiment. They have apparently shown that this pervection does occur. And given that the greenhouse gas warming hypothesis relies entirely, fundamentally, and necessarily upon a statement that there are areas of our atmosphere which are in local thermodynamic equilibrium only, and that the entire system from top to bottom is in disequilibrium, that is a reason to reject the global greenhouse effect. Not the effect that those molecules absorb infrared radiation. They do. I have no argument with that, and neither does Connolly and Connolly. The argument from Connolly and Connolly is that when you look at this non-reductively and take it to the large scale of the whole system of the atmosphere itself, actually, it looks like this is taken care of in terms of thermodynamic equilibrium, and the idea appears to be bunk. Anyway, those papers were published in 2014, so the best part of 6 years ago. They're in an open peer-reviewed journal. Nobody, not one physicist anywhere in the world has offered a single criticism, correction, refutation, or even a comment to any of these papers. Interesting. So that's the presentation for what it's worth. A couple of other interesting observations that I have come across in my time. I've heard people say interesting things like the greenhouse gas model requires that the greatest rate of warming should be at an altitude of around 10 to 15 kilometers in the equatorial zone, and apparently that rate of warming is absent. And it just seems to me like this is a discussion that is worth having. This is interesting. My understanding of all of those physics will not match Tony's, I imagine. And I, at this stage, would like to throw it back to him and say, okay, what did you think of that, Tony? Does any of that make sense? What's going on there, do you think?
Okay, I'll mute myself to start with. Well, Bart, thank you very much for that. And I just want to remind everyone that both our guests tonight have their channels linked in the description. Please do check them out and subscribe if you like. Bart, that was a great presentation. Thank you for putting that together. I'm absolutely blown away. This is very strange for me to have two guests that have come on with succinct, well-maintained arguments, because normally one person comes to argument and the other person comes with, yeah, but it's flat, bro, innit? So
I can do that if you like.
No,
if you want me to, I can.
It's fine. It's fine. Honestly, I'm enjoying the change. Thank you. But yeah, a lot to discuss there. So Tony, well, before we go to
Also,
Tony...
please, just before we go to Tony, can I just put a caveat once again?
Yeah?
My opinion here is not relevant, and I haven't given my opinion. I have presented what Connolly and Connolly have said, as far as I can tell. Okay?
And I really do appreciate that. Team, before we go to Tony, any thoughts on that?
No, I'm just really interested in hearing each other's rebuttal now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bart and Tony. Over to you. Ask any questions that you like, and we'll just let you guys run the conversation from here.
Okay, my initial reaction that I was asked for is that I've never heard a more ridiculous set of physics claims in my entire life. They did nothing less than make up a completely new physical mechanism for the transfer of heat. And had a flat earther done that, we would be calling them absolutely stupid. In fact, they do that. Flat earthers call it relative density disequilibrium. These clowns call it perfection. And I'm not going to mince words here. The reason that no physicist has responded to this or corrected this is because it's tendentious nonsense published in an obscure journal that nobody's engaged with. If you want me to accept a new branch of physics, you're going to have to publish it in a reputable journal, and that's going to be Nature or Science. And Nature and Science specialize in publishing stuff that that is updating our understanding of physics. What you have claimed, what these guys have claimed, or guy and woman or whatever, what they've claimed is that our current understanding of physics is just wrong. And if they're going to make that, they're going to have to come up with a lot more than what they've come up with here. Could be, maybe, might be, which you said a lot. The tropospheric hot, going in no particular order, the tropospheric hotspot is observed to exist, so your information out of there is out of date. You define the phase boundary to occur at the. I'm not finished. You define the phase boundary to occur at the tropopause, and then the fact that the phase boundary always occurs at the tropopause is somehow meant to be validation of their hypothesis. The lapse rate in the troposphere is a result of the primary mechanism of heat motion being convection. As you move into the stratosphere, the density of the material becomes low enough that you cannot have you cannot have as efficient heat transport by convection, and you move into the other ones, radiative transfer and conduction. The entire thing about molar density, yes, molar density is well defined. It's the fundamental building block of the radiative transfer model. So the fact that you get, you seem to think that Connolly, etc., have come up with this theory and related it to pressure independently, and that nobody else has done this. No, it's how the atmosphere works. So the fact that they get a result that that gives an agreement between pressure and molar density, well, yes, so does every theory of the atmosphere. That's how atmospheric physics works. You also made something that I really object to, which is your suggestion that once a paper is published, the science on that is considered finished. No, that's not how it works. People comment on the paper, and then you get into comment and reply papers, and then there are validation papers, and then there are continuation. So what you've done here is you've picked a scientific result that claims to have overthrown the majority, the entirety of our understanding of physics, and you claim that radiative transfer theory is based on the atmosphere not being in thermodynamic equilibrium is transparently false. The temperature profiles within the atmosphere are calculated using the Schwarzschild equations from the radiative transfer properties and the application of boundary conditions. There's no assertion of thermodynamic disequilibrium. That's just a lie. I apologize for getting, we're here discussing this tendentious nonsense when we could be doing something constructive, and it fires me up. So back to you.
Thank you for that, Tony.
Okay.
I just do want to remind you, Tony, that the Bart did make the disclaimer that this isn't his personal opinion necessarily, but yeah.
and that is why I did not attack Bart.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
I didn't
awesome.
attack
Yeah.
Bart. I didn't.
Although,
I'm not attacking
Tony,
him.
you did say.
I am.
Hang on. Tony, you did say you said, you claimed quite a bit, and I've disclaimed several times that I'm making no claims of any kind here. I am presenting my understanding of what Connolly and Connolly have said. Okay? And the reason I'm doing this is because I think it is an interesting discussion to have. You've given your opinion on it.
I think that it's counterproductive.
Tony, I'll let you speak. Please don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. That's very rude. Okay? You did get very fired up there in your response. Okay, I've presented the information as I understand it to be from Connolly and Connolly very dispassionately. I haven't taken a position myself whatsoever. I was interested to hear what a dispassionate scientific physicist might say about what Connolly and Connolly have said. And frankly, Tony, I'm a little bit disappointed with your response. Not because I agree with them at all, I'm not saying I do, but because you have lost your dispassion, you've got fired up, you've appealed to authority, okay, you've set up straw men, and it's me at all, okay? Now, if you've got some physics, hang on, I haven't finished, Tony. Now, you said they've made up this prediction thing, okay? Have you read that paper? Have you had a look at the experimental apparatus they set up, the experiment they conducted, which they claim confirms the pervection in air?
Yes, and if their claim was correct, it would be in science or nature, and it isn't.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, Tony.
Yes, necessarily. If they had validated, they had observationally validated...
Guys, let's try and not talk over each other.
Necessarily until the cows come home. It doesn't change the fact that it is not necessarily so.
So, what you're doing is you have, and this is you have done this. It isn't Connolly and Connolly. You have picked a paper that says that modern physics is wrong, that 100 years of scientific investigation is wrong, and that it needs to be replaced with a new mechanism. Now, if you're going to claim that, you're going to need... Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
You
I said nothing.
You just did. You just said that. Right, you just said that there was experimental validation. You said that there was experimental validation of this result. You just said that they had.
Tony, don't shout over me, son. That's very fucking rude.
Guys, come on. Let's take it down a level. Everyone, take a deep breath.
I said Connolly and Connolly conducted an experiment, which they claim confirms pervection. I asked you whether you had seen that paper and could comment on any flaws that might be extant in that particular piece of experimental work that they did. So instead of attacking me, why don't you answer the question I asked you, which was, have you read that paper and can you point to the flaws in that? Because I'd be interested to hear what a physicist has to say about it, not a petulant child.
You might have supplied me with the paper ahead of time, mightn't you? It is fatuous to present. I am speaking now.
Right.
You asked me a question, and I am now responding to it. Right?
Okay. Fine. I really thought that this was going to be going a completely different way. I really thought that Tony was going to be a lot more professional than he is being here. I'm really disappointed in it.
Well, let's just try and carry on the conversation.
Hang on. Okay. I did ask Craig whether you wanted to have a look at the material ahead of time. He didn't respond to me that you did.
Sorry, if that's my fault, I must have missed that email. I do apologise.
That's fine. Okay, so it's not really important here. If Tony wants to read that paper and come back to us with what's wrong with that experimental study, that would be fine. I would be very interested to hear from a scientist about what is wrong with that.
Okay, can you
The reason I asked,
can you give me a piece of it?
Tony, excuse me, I have not finished. If Tony wants to say it's nonsense, then that is his opinion until such time as he has read that paper and can then point to what's wrong with it.
You're going to
So
have
if you
to
want to come
supply
back,
some signal that you've finished talking.
All right, go ahead, Tony.
Okay, so this paper claims that modern physics, hundreds of years of modern physics, is wrong. If this
Yes, it
paper
does.
were correct, it would be being published in Science and Nature.
I disagree.
If this paper, what is it? Okay,
Let him finish. Let him finish. Go ahead, Tony.
Your opinion on this is immaterial. I am telling you what the reality of scientific publishing is. Now,
I've been involved in that
comment.
Yes, and I know what scientific publishing is
Okay,
about.
Bart,
Let
him finish.
Bart, please let him finish his point.
Well, hang on, he didn't let me finish.
So
He was all over me.
I'm going to step back. I'm going to step back a minute here. Okay, so in 60 years' time, 60% of India is going to be too hot for people to undertake manual labour in. And the entire Middle East is going to be too hot for human habitation. At that point, 1 billion Indians are not going to be able to sustain their own food supply. Where are they going to move? Are they going to move into Bangladesh, which is going to be inundated by water? Are they going to move into Pakistan? Are they going to move into India? Both of those countries are nuclear powers, as is India. The consequences of what is going on here are earth-shattering, and billions of lives depend on getting the answers right. Now, there is absolutely no observational validation for this. Even if we accept the novel physics that has been proposed, why is Earth's mean surface temperature now changing at faster than at any point in Earth's geological history? Why is that occurring now? Under this causal mechanism. Let's assume that Connolly and Connolly are right. Why is Earth's mean surface temperature increasing so rapidly now?
That is not something that I am expert in. I have not taken a position on that. Hang on. You asked me a question.
Tony, give him a sec to respond,
Yep.
Tony.
Okay, I am not some flat-tard that you can basically ring punch here, Tony. Okay, you ask me a question.
No,
you give me the respect of allowing me to answer the question, Tony. Okay, the question you asked was, why is this occurring? The answer I have for you is that's not my area of expertise. What I chose to do today.
Okay, you've answered it, and so I can move on with the conversation, right?
Excuse me. I have not finished, Tony. My role here today, as I clearly stated, was to put forward some argumentation, some information, some potential misinformation. I don't know. I'm not a physicist that works in this field, that is in the literature. The reason I wanted to talk to a physicist about it was to get a sensible discussion about the flaws with it. What you're saying is you need to have a look at the material. But, excuse me.
That was a lie, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. If you wanted the opinion of a physicist, if you wanted the opinion of a physicist, what you would do is you would take the paper down to your local university, show it to a physicist, and get their opinion of it. That's not what you did. What you did was you chose to have a debate in a public forum with me. Now, that isn't because you're interested in my opinion on this. This is because you want to have a public debate about it. Now, so your claim that this is all about you acquiring information is not true, because if this were just an academic exercise, if your only purpose here was to get information, you could have done that in any one of a number of ways. Alternative mechanisms, you could, for instance, have just emailed me the paper and asked me to assess it, but you didn't do that. Right, you didn't even supply the link to the paper underneath my climate change presentation that I noticed you commented on. Right, there, so what you've done is you've come into a public forum with this, and you're now sea lioning. Really, you're pretending that this is just that you're just asking for the opinion of somebody who's better informed than you, but the way to go about that process is not actually via YouTube. You object to my unprofessional attitude. I'm not at work, mate, and you didn't approach me at work, right? What you've done is you've come onto a YouTube channel, and this is not how scientific debates are undertaken. If you wanted a scientific debate, you could have gone in any one of a number of different ways and gotten one. And when I say you're worse than a flat earther, flat earthers aren't being obstructionist to policy discussions that will save billions of lives. You are.
Say that last thing again. Sorry, I missed the last sentence.
So flat earthers are not being obstructive to discussions on which billions of lives depend. You are. Mm-hmm. So what we should be doing at this point is trying to work out how to prevent hundreds of millions to billions of deaths. And instead, we're wasting time discussing fringe scientific theories as though they have some validity. They don't. Get over it. Let's get on with dealing with the problem.
Okay, so your answer to my presenting this information as it was written by the Connollys, rather than to think about what they've said, rather than saying, well, I need to see the papers and we can have a discussion about it once I've done that, rather than any of that kind of stuff. Craig, can we do something about this?
Give him a second. No, okay. Give me a second, Tony, to finish.
I'll be finished. Simple as that. I am not putting up with it. Okay. Tony has strawmanned me about half a dozen times in the last 10 minutes alone. Okay. Not acceptable behaviour. Excuse me. You just said right there that I am taking a position that I am not taking. That is a straw man. Okay. You have become irate. And, you know, if you are irate, it should be with the Connolly. Excuse, don't even think about it, Tony. Hold your tongue until I'm done.
Come on.
You had said that I am obstructing something. I am obstructing nothing whatsoever. And had you allowed me to finish previously, before you rudely steamrolled over the top of me, before I had finished what I had to say was, partly my role is in trying to get the opinion of someone who I thought should be quite well educated in this area. I have sought other opinions previously, and I will continue to seek other opinions ongoingly, and they will be academic discussions had with academic people, absolutely. The other reason for this discussion today is, of course, to do with my profession now, and that is I am a professional full-time YouTuber. I have an existing channel which is reasonably successful, and I have a brand new channel for which I want to get some public profile. That was my purpose here today. Okay?
So trying to shield yourself out.
Exactly. So don't claim that it's an honest scientific investigation.
Bart, to be fair, it did feel like you'd finished there. It did feel like you'd finished.
Okay, well, I'm not finished until I say I'm finished then. How's that? Okay?
I mean, okay.
So basically, what Tony has done there has accused me of taking a position I have not taken, and he has basically his response to the material I presented was appeal to authority, which is we all know is a complete fallacy. And rather than dealing with the material, he's then said, okay, they've made some shit up. Okay, to which I've said, okay, great, have you seen that paper in which they have, in their minds, they have established the mechanism that they are talking about, this novel mechanism. Tony said, no, I haven't seen that paper, basically. So what I'm now suggesting is that what Tony ought to do is go and read those 3 papers, and then, if he would like, we can have another, hopefully, more sensible, more professional discussion, be it in a public forum, for the purposes of increasing both of our notoriety as YouTube professionals, sure. But just to jump up and down and throw his toys out of the pram, straw man me,
let's try and leave
really
the
talk over
bombs
the
out
top
if we can.
of me, well, you know, I didn't start it. Okay, but I will bloody finish it, because I will not put up with that behaviour from anybody.
Won't.
Okay, right. I'd like to ask a question to maybe lead this conversation in a particular direction. Okay, now my personal profession and my qualifications education wise, I've got a degree in nuclear engineering and one in physics. So things like heat transfer processes and everything is something I'm very familiar with. However, perfection is something that I've not heard of. And I think this is Tony's main objection to the whole thing, is what they are suggesting is that our current knowledge of thermodynamics and heat transfer mechanisms is entirely wrong. Is there any supporting evidence to back that up?
Okay, so the answer to that, Craig, is that it is outside my area of expertise to comment on the veracity of what they have done. Yes, they have proposed a means of heat transfer in the atmosphere, which is hitherto unreported by others. That doesn't mean it is wrong. It just means that they may be the first people who have proposed this mechanism. They have done an experiment in the 3rd paper, which they claim supports the mechanism being extant. What I would like is to have someone who is particularly expert in that area have a look at that material and tell us all what's wrong with it.
Okay, Professor
That would
Phil
seem to be
Bell is in the
perfectly
chat, and he says that it's garbage.
Again, Bart, it did kind of feel like you'd finished there. Have you finished your point, or can Tony respond?
Did I say I was finished? No, I didn't. Okay, you need to give someone a pause to take a breath between sentences.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, you're
move
just
on,
going to keep doing the
please.
same thing. Okay? So that's where we're at. Okay, these people have proposed a mechanism. They've done an experiment which they have proposed supports the mechanism. Now the responsibility of the scientific community is to investigate the claim that they've made and to take a stand on it. Okay, now one person's opinion is fine. 2 people's opinions are fine. People may have different opinions. What I was hoping for was for someone to dispassionately look at what they did. Me, as a physiologist, what was wrong with it?
Okay.
Now,
What was wrong with it? It doesn't.
Have you finished?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, Tony.
Okay, for starters, so I had to sit here for half an hour while you explained, completely unrelated physical principles that had nothing to do with your final point, which was there's a new physical form of heat transfer, and radiative transfer, as science understands it, is wrong. You could have presented this data in 5 minutes tops, and instead you made us sit through it for half an hour. Now, there are a couple of points that I'd like to make. One, the journal that these papers appear in, and the website that the journal is on, was set up by the Connollies. 2,
That's right. Yes.
which doesn't incline me to accept the impartiality of the process. 2, Professor Feldbell just read the paper, and he says it's garbage. 3,
Okay.
if you're going to come from outside my area of expertise and start presenting nonsense to you, when I say it's nonsense, and I get fired up because it's derailing the debate, again, I Connolly's work, And it wasn't until you started sort of interposing yourself that the attacks turned onto you. Again, the constructive discussion that we should be having here is about the policy decisions needed to address the problems we face, on whether or not physics that is well known to work works. You know, there are a million reasons why. You know, if you look through Earth's geological and paleoclimatological history, there are a bunch of questions that need to be answered. Given that the Earth, given the Sun 30% dimmer 4 billion years ago, why was there liquid water on the surface? That's explained carbon dioxide radiative forcing. When albedo is high, the Earth gets really, really cold. So how did the Earth get out of the various snowball phases? The carbon dioxide explanation explains that. What caused the Permian-Triassic extinction event? Well, it turns out that there was a massive release of carbon dioxide because of the intrusion of the Siberian Traps lava into Carboniferous sediments. What caused the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum? It seems to have been large-scale releases of clathrates from the ocean floor that changed ocean acidity. And you know nothing of this. You know nothing of the climatological and geological context into which you're stepping. Also, the glacial cycles. The glacial cycles are the rhythm of the glacial cycles is driven by the by Milankovitch forcing, but Milankovitch forcing in and of itself is too weak to cause the observed glacial cycles, so that needs to be enhanced. In fact, it produces less than 20% of the necessary forcing. The remaining 80% of the forcing comes from a combination of albedo change and carbon dioxide. You're wandering into you and the Connollys are wandering into a conversation where you know nothing about the observational validation for the radiative transfer model, and I'm sick of it. And you would slap down a Flerf. If a Flerf came in here and started doing the same things that you're doing, and they do exactly the same tactics. They cherry pick their sources, they cherry pick their quotes, they invent entirely new brands of physics, and then they say, well, it's up to main science to establish that we're wrong. Actually, mainstream science has better uses for its research money than to slap down somebody we know is completely in error.
Can I ask a quick question? So
I'm finished.
They put this paper on a website they themselves set up, right? Is that right, Bart?
Yeah, there is an issue there.
Yeah,
there is an issue there, Craig.
You can't peer review your own paper, right?
No, that's why they.
Am I missing something here? Because that's what it seems like they've done. They've set up a site to peer review their own paper, and unless I'm really missing something, that's not how it works.
No, not generally. That's why they've left it open peer review, and we have to trust that they would publish anything that was put forward by anybody.
I mean, I object to them using the term peer review, honestly.
They've called it open peer review.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's
exactly
flat
Earth. Yeah, that's exactly flat Earther, like just claiming something is what it isn't. For me, like I know that you're saying this isn't your opinion necessarily, but if you are to present this evidence, Bart, I feel like you should have some knowledge behind the underpinning physics behind what they're saying, and they are suggesting that all of physics is wrong. Literally all of physics. Everything we know about physics is wrong. Internal combustion it doesn't work the way we say it does. Heat transfer from a flame doesn't work the way that we say it was. According to that paper, all the thermodynamics is completely fucking backwards, and that is, for you to come and say, well, I don't have any, knowledge in that is a little bit like, that's the entire point of the paper. How can you not have any knowledge of that?
Okay. Right, well, hang on, Craig. 2 points there. Number one, yes, both you and Tony are absolutely right. They have set up the journal themselves. They have put these papers up themselves. Yes. They've said it's open to review by anybody at any time, and they've received no feedback. Fine. Okay, whatever. So that's the first point. I mean, I'm well versed with what peer review is. I have a long list of peer-reviewed publications myself, so I do know what that is about. As I said before, my role today was to present the argument as best as I could that it seemed to me they were making, so that people in a physics field could comment on it, rather than I was taking a particular position myself. So that was the first point. The second point was my reading of what they did say was not that all of physics is wrong. It seemed to me that what they were trying to do was to say, look, there's another additional thing here that hasn't been hitherto described. Some additional information. Not everything is wrong, but we need to add this in.
No,
and
the
maybe
paper, sorry to interrupt, Bart, but the paper literally suggests that thermodynamics is incorrect, that the heat transfer mechanisms that we understand and base predictive models around it is incorrect. Perfection isn't a thing. They've made that shit up.
Well, I mean, I have to take your word for that because it's not my area of expertise. And as I said, my role here today, my goal here today was to bring the discussion forward as a nice change to talking to people without any brains whatsoever about Flerfs in an area that I absolutely am not expert in.
With all due respect, Bart, the paper you have presented is as bad as someone saying the Earth is a magic pizza.
Okay, well, that's great. That's the feedback that, you know, is a kind, I guess, invited by having the discussion.
Well,
and
can I add to this?
Yeah, go ahead, team.
Yeah, go on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've tried to be quiet because I'm on a little bit of a delay here, so I didn't want to interrupt you guys. But so I agree with Tony. Like, yes, we do make fun of a lot of flat earthers, and yes, it's a nice breath of fresh air to get a more intelligent discussion going on. But what Tony's saying is absolutely right. What you're proposing actually puts lives at risk in the future. If more people took your position and took your stance that global warming is not really a thing, it's just being made up by, you know, by mainstream science as a, you know, as some kind of way of keeping some kind of economic control or political control over the people. If you get more and more and more people to believe the way you think, then we will see a significant increase in the, you know, the uptick in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which will result in more and more people losing lives. So I understand why PhD Tony is saying that while it is a more intelligent discussion, it's even more necessary than Flat Earth because it's really dealing with a dangerous subject.
Okay. So thank you for that, team. And hang on. My response to what team has just said is that it's a straw man, team, because I did not take a position and I did not indicate how I think or I feel. Neither did I make any comment whatsoever about policy. I said, here is some papers that I thought was interesting. It was beyond my scope of expertise in a lot of ways, and I wanted to talk to you about it because this is your area of expertise more fully, and you have responded in a way that I'm surprised by a bit. Although perhaps I shouldn't be so surprised because, you know, you guys do get very passionate, and
we attack
okay.
really bad pseudo anti-science. I'm reading through the paper briefly. One sec, team. One sec. I'm just reading through the paper, and I'm blown away by their methodology failures, their data collection methods. The whole thing is a JM truth level bad. Sorry, team. Over to you.
Yeah, I want to say that, yeah, you're right. You didn't take a solid position. You never said, yeah, global warming is absolutely a farce put on by the government. And you didn't say that. But Hip Hop Hippie never says the earth is flat, you know, and you say, hey, you're a flat earther. He says, no, I'm not a flat earther. But he goes up here and he argues about that the earth's not a globe. So to say that even though I'm saying, yes, the position that you're holding, the side of the argument that you're standing on, is a dangerous side, and that's the reason why it needs to be addressed. But you're right. You did not make that claim individually. I'm not trying to strawman you with those comments. I'm just saying that when you take that position, you immediately get thrown that label sometimes, and it's, you know, it's a dangerous position in my subjective viewpoint.
I agree, team. I hope that you don't hold this position, Bart, because it's an idiotic position to hold. No physics in that paper, no science. There is no science in that paper at all, and no physics. At least, you know, I don't have a PhD. I've got 2 bachelor's level degrees, right? But everything that I would have learned, both in my, my thermodynamics areas of physics and pretty much all of my nuclear engineering, would be bunk if what they claim in that paper is true. Tony, I'm not speaking out of line there.
Can I ask you another question?
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. What he's suggesting is that pretty much all of physics is wrong.
Right, sorry, team.
Me or the Connolly?
The Connollys.
The argument you are presenting.
Yeah, I wanted to get a bit of a clarification on a point that you brought up. It was something that had to do with that paper that matched what the ideal gas law predicts. Can you kind of go over again what your argument was? Because I was trying to follow along while a lot of things were going on, and I just missed that, and I don't want to straw man you. Go ahead.
What the paper says, at the relevant part of that paper, it says that the ideal gas law is a known. There is a known equation for that. It's a synthesis of Boyle's law and Charles' law and the other one as well. And what they're saying in the paper is that if a gas obeys ideal gas laws, then it is in thermodynamic equilibrium. That was the statement made by the Connollys. So what do we think about that, boys? Is that correct or not?
Okay. Well, I would argue the point that the atmosphere doesn't obey the ideal gas laws, since the ideal gas laws are under ideal circumstances. For instance, in the ideal gas law, you see a direct relationship between pressure and temperature. So as pressure goes up, temperature goes up. For instance, if we have a can of gas, or a can of gas, and we increase the molecule speed on the inside, the gas rises in temperature. It rises in pressure. It in turn rises in temperature. However, in our atmosphere, we see that a rise in temperature is always associated with a decrease in pressure. This is because we don't live inside of a contained system, therefore the ideal gas law doesn't truly apply in that situation.
Well,
now, I'm saying this without looking at the paper, so...
I would qualify that, actually. So in equilibrium conditions, the ideal gas law is used to, the ideal gas law in combination with the hydrostatic formula for pressure is used to determine those average atmospheric profiles that Bart was showing earlier. The suggestion of thermodynamic equilibrium is being misused here, in the sense that just because the system is in thermodynamic equilibrium does not mean that there is no heat transfer. It does not mean that there is no radiative transfer within portions of the system. And those radiative transfer, the mechanism of radiative transfer is modeled using the Schwarzschild equations, which any astrophysicist will tell you they just, they're used to model the interior of stars and all sorts of other things. They just model the energy flow upwards and downwards. And from that energy flux, you can determine the temperature profiles, and they agree exactly with the observed temperature profiles. They certainly include the width of the tropopause, which seems to be in evidence there. The point where they say that the ozone, the argument that the ozone heating is a failed hypothesis is complete nonsense. So why is the troposphere thicker at the poles? It's thicker at the poles because the air at the poles is cooler. It's denser. The tropopause marks the point at which the density of air falls so low that convection stops being the dominant form of heat transport. So if you have colder, denser air at the poles, the tropopause is going to be higher, right? That's why the tropopause is higher at the poles. So the assertion that that is some sort of problem with the ozone with ozone heating is fallacious. it's not true. And I mean, you know, I went through a bunch of other arguments, and I went through them with my voice raised and my temper lost. And you're right, Bart. You know what? I can lose my cool, and I did lose my cool, and I was rude to you, and I'm going to apologise for that. I've calmed down now. This is a subject that arouses my passions because,
Understandably so.
there are, from my you know, hundreds of millions to billions of lives depend on us getting a decent response in place, and it's already been 20 years now, and no effective response is emerging. So I think, you know, I don't know if you know who Frank Fenner is. He was an Australian medical scientist. He was the person that the World Health Organization assigned to certify that smallpox had been eradicated. And in his later career, he dedicated himself to sort of environmental medicine, examining human interactions with the environment, right? And in 2010, he was asked what his opinion about climate change was, and he said, well, my opinion is that in 100 years, humanity will be extinct from a combination of climate change and overpopulation, and it is now too late to do anything about it. That was 10 years ago. Now, I'm hoping he was wrong, right? But the longer we leave it, the more expensive and the more lethal this problem is going to get. We need to take this seriously, and we need to take it seriously now. But okay, so just to go, so you showed the agreement of the molar of the molar density. Molar density is actually intrinsic to traditional climate physics. So the fact that they get accurate results, an accurate correlation between pressure and molar density, yeah, so does traditional climate physics. You're just basically piggybacking off the ideal gas law, and the ideal gas law does more or less hold, except it starts breaking down once you get deep into Jupiter's atmosphere, for instance. The atmospheric temperature profile is well predicted by established physics, and I think they used a circular definition of the phase boundary in the tropopause, and then they introduced that later as validation of their theory. I don't think that it's well argued. I think they introduced a completely new branch of physics, and I just think that the entire thing is tendentious nonsense from beginning to end.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
So as I said at the very beginning, my goal here today was to bring this information / misinformation, if you like,
Definitely
to public attention. Okay, to public attention.
Yep.
To say, look, this is out there.
Yep.
Not to take a position myself, not because it's not my area of expertise, but to say, just really interesting. What do you guys think about it? Now, largely we've done that, and that's fantastic. There was a period there when it got to cold, it became personalised, and I accept your apology for that. Absolutely, I apologise for losing my rag a little bit as well, of course. That's what I wanted to do.
At the risk of cutting you off there, it was my fault. It was my fault entirely. You don't owe me an apology. It was very gracious of you to offer one, but it was my fault that things got out of control there. So sorry, again.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that very much. So I wanted to have this discussion so that when people are having these discussions around their breakfast table or the dinner table or whatever, people can look back on this discussion and say, we dealt with it on Fight's channel, we had a good discussion about it, somebody presented the Connolly's material, a scientist, sure, but not a physicist. I'm a physiologist, I'm a nutritionist. I presented the material in as balanced way as I could as to what I thought they were trying to say and what they were trying to say. And all three of you gentlemen have said, here's why we think it's absolute nonsense. I thank you for that. I think the public at large should thank Craig, for the courage to have this discussion. I was never actually intending a debate, this discussion on his channel, because it is a subject that can lead to YouTube problems in terms of shadow banning and stuff. But also, obviously, I'm absolutely acknowledging that my second very clear goal here was to make myself known to those of you in the Globe community that I do have a new Globe channel. It is based on the standard ideas around, why it is that we are saying that the world is absolutely a globe. You will see over there, you will see me presenting scientific information in a scientific way. What you've seen today from me is me taking a position for the purposes of this discussion, one, and two, so that people know I exist, okay? And I've seen a lot of stuff in the chat past there that people are just responding very emotively and are being quite abusive towards me just for bringing this material to the table. And I just think that people need to think about themselves a little bit, frankly.
Hey,
that's all I have to say.
Know what channel you're on. They're used to being in the chat shouting at an idiot. All right, it's just what they do.
Don't worry about that. Wait till you hear the super chats that come in that talk about how skinny I am and shit. Don't worry, they love you.
So I do want to make one point, and that is that in general, if you have material like this, as I was saying, like there are a lot of, it's one of the techniques that flat earthers use, is that they they present some unsupported stuff from that they've cherry picked from one particular publication that proposes an entirely new physical process, and then they say, well, there you go. What do you make of that? I go, and we castigate them for it, and we and then we rip it apart, and that's exactly what's happening here. So I would suggest that you in future take a more cautious view to promoting what I consider to be climate science misinformation, because it does, there are organizations and individuals out there who do actively promote the sort of misinformation that the Connollys are presenting, and I think that the way to extinguish them is starving them of oxygen, starving them of coverage, because what they're actually doing is quite dangerous and quite sinister. And I do lose my temper. As you were talking, you gave quite a long presentation, and sort of I really wanted to jump in and respond point by point, and I muted myself to stop myself from doing that, and then I didn't give you an opportunity to clearly and effectively to respond to what I was saying earlier, and I apologize for that, but it really did overwhelm me, because this is something that I consider to be extremely dangerous and an extremely important point of public policy. We really do need to be taking this seriously, and I noticed that some people in the chat want to turn it to want to say that eco-terrorists are a bigger threat, or that climate scientists are only in it for the money. No scientist is in it for the money. If we were in it for the money, we'd be working for oil companies or that sort of thing. But anyway.
Yeah, I just hope that this isn't something you would push on your channel or any channel, Bart, because please understand me when I say, under no uncertain terms, not only is the information contained in that paper incredibly wrong, like, flat earther level of retardation wrong, but it contains dangerous misinformation that it is something that can affect millions, potentially billions of lives. If global warming carries on the way it's going, where I live won't be around for that much longer. There's so much of the world that is under threat from what we've done to this planet, and a narrative that paper pushes is as equally dangerous as any of the bad science and the cult-like behavior that flat earthers push.
Right. So to all of that, I have to reiterate my earlier statement that I do not feel as if presenting the argument is pushing it. I see it as encouraging continuation of the discussion. Now, I did that malice aforethought red rag to a bull, and I knew damn well that's what I was doing, of course. That said, it seemed to me, Craig, that your whole channel is about continuing the discussion, because you continually invite people to come on your channel and say stupid shit.
Yeah.
And then
Yep, I mean, that's...
hang on, just hang on. I'm nearly...
Let him finish there.
Yep.
Fuck. All right.
Sorry,
so,
I was just going to validate you. I just wanted to provide validation, so sorry. But I'll leave it till the end.
Right. So that's what I've done. I haven't promoted what the Connollys have said. I've presented it and invited sensible discussion about it so that people can understand why it is that you guys who are physicists or know about physics say it's bunk, it's crap, it's no good. Fantastic. Yeah, and I just think we need to be clear about, you know, the fact that what it is that we're presenting here and what the roles were that we were trying to achieve. And I think that even having said that, I don't know, probably half a dozen times, there are still people in the chat who are still drawing horns on me and saying I'm the Antichrist and whatever else, when actually what I've done is provide an opportunity for us to have another discussion. And frankly, I would have thought this has probably been a welcome relief from the constant stream of dullards that come on this channel and say it's flat and it doesn't move.
Yeah, and I think we'll totally understand that, Bart. But my point there is that I do hope that this isn't something you would push. And I understand you're saying that this isn't your position, and that's fair enough. And you've obviously looked at the paper enough to be able to put together a presentation, and I just hope it's not something that you would promote or tell other people that this is something that you should look at, because frankly stuff like that is better forgotten. It's so full of misinformation and bad science and dangerous thoughts that it is something that probably we shouldn't mention the Connellys and their research, because it's so nonsensical and so dangerous. Yeah, the discussion is cool, but as long as we're not saying, everyone go and look at this paper just in case, because no one should read that nonsense.
Yeah,
well,
I want to add to that, because as someone who also hosts nonsense on his channel and invites dangerous conversations to be discussed, there's a difference between giving someone a platform to promote an idea and giving someone a platform to promote an idea that we are actively against the idea, where we're making a conscious effort to say this is a bad idea, this is wrong. So yeah, I can agree with you. There's, from an outside perspective, if we were sitting here just allowing you to have the platform and say, yep, go check out what he has to say, then that would be slightly hypocritical for us to say that you have a bad idea and that you're promoting a dangerous idea. But the fact that we're here standing against that idea is why we're here, and I don't think it's the same equivalent. It's not equivalent to one another.
So I guess that's the one sort of point that it seems all three of you are in agreement on, that I'm kind of disagreeing with you on, and that is that I think that we should highlight problems. We should highlight people who are saying things that are not in line with what we understand scientifically, and we should make it absolutely patent to the general unwashed public as to why that is. And I think that's what we've done today. People that do actually bother to go and check out my channel called It's Round Like will find a bunch of actual science there, and there will be no mention actually at all of climate science on there at all. And those who are interested in nutrition can go to a nutrition-based site and find out all about nutrition there, because those are areas in which I am expert enough, I feel, to comment. So I would like to thank you, Craig, for setting this up. I want to thank you, Tony, for your time Thank you for sitting through all of that. I felt that it was important to try and present what those authors had said as fully as possible before you guys lambast what they said. I'm not in a position to lambast them. I'm just in a position to say this is what I think they said. I think you guys have all made yourselves really clear on your opinions on it. I think that's great. I think I've done what I needed to do in terms of saying, hi, here I am. This is what I do in terms of on my channel, and it's not talking about climate change, by the way. That's not what I'm doing on my channel.
So I feel like I do need to ask the question, Bart. Do you hold a position on climate change?
Do I hold a position on climate change? My position is that climate change seems to be very, very clearly a thing. It seems to be occurring, absolutely. I don't think anyone remotely sensible is arguing that it is not occurring and that it has always occurred. I am not remotely expert enough to comment on the absolute underpinnings, the cause and effect of it. And so I can't really, all I can do is say here is, yep, go on.
So my question is, did my presentation make anything clearer to you?
Everything in your presentation I've seen before, because I watched your presentation, absolutely. And all of it is in line with my very cursory understanding of all of the physics involved in what you said. That's why I said to you before I even started, look, thanks for that, and it was very clear, and absolutely I'm not disagreeing with anything you said in your presentation. However, there seems to be this other information floating around, and that was the invitation, was to say, well, here's what they said. Okay, I'm sorry it took half an hour to get through, but that's what they said, and you guys have said, okay, no. And as the non-physicist here, I'm going, okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now I'm going to read some super chats, Bart. There's some directed towards you. Not all of them are going to be nice. Would you mind hanging around and answering some of them?
That's fine. That's fine. Yep.
Team, before we go to super chats, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to say that climate science is extremely, extremely dynamic. There's a lot of factors to take into consideration. Only a few of them were even presented here tonight, like albedo and solar irradiance. There's just a lot of different cogs in that wheel that drive it, and I don't think that there's any way to refute the fact that humans have had a negative or an intervention into that process, and it's negative in regards to how good it is for humanity to continue to drive up the climate unnaturally. So I think we should definitely take a hard look at the real science that's out there and make sure that we promote the right ideas.
So just want to put in a quick point. Michael Mann would say that humans are responsible for 110 to 120% of the warming that we're seeing, which is to say that he would expect it to actually be cooling. So we're actually responsible for more than is apparent in the warming trend. But anyway, carry on.
Right. Okay. Just want to say again, everyone, thank you very much for being here watching tonight. It's definitely a change of pace for the channel. Still got a little bit of a dumpster fire, so that's always nice. But everyone, thank you very much for being here and supporting me and my channel. And you know how much it means to me. It absolutely means the world. Just going to announce now that on Friday I'll be doing my 40-hour stream for 40,000 subscribers. So make sure you guys come and see that. I've still got about 150 to go, but I'm saying I'm going to make it. But yeah, okay. So 40 hours for 40,000 subscribers starting Friday morning, 10 a.m. UK time. And thank you very much, guys, for getting me up there. I can't believe I've got nearly 40,000 subs. It blows my mind. Thank you. Now, super chats. We've got.
Thank you, Craig. Sorry, I just want to step in and I just want to say thank you, Craig, on behalf of your subscribers. We're here because you and team do a fantastic job, and I'm sure Bart would agree that you provide not only information but entertainment, and we really appreciate it. So thank you. You deserve all the success you're getting.
It's you guys enjoying the stuff that makes me want to keep doing it. That's for sure. Right, so McCabe Malafika for 10 Australian dollars. He asked Bart, Mr. K, your physio, Tony is a geophysicist. You know that every principle comes expectations, and the expertise is marshalled by understanding the expectations, the exceptions, the nuance. So why should anyone believe you or this paper?
I don't necessarily think they should. It's completely out of my expertise, as I said repeatedly.
Okay, fair enough. Beanie Beeman for $5 says, first live debate, please shout me out and to my son Gavin. Beanie Beeman and your son Gavin, thank you very much for supporting and watching the channel. Hello. We love what you and team are doing, and we love doing it for you. Better Charger, $2 New Zealand says, get him, Tony. Tony did. Jessica G for $2 says, FTFE, delivering the dumpster fires. You know, that's what, I know you guys love the dumpster fires, so we're always going to have some kind of dumpster fire going on here. You can spam the dumpster fire emojis in the chat.
That was my fault. Bart didn't come in here trying to start a dumpster fire. Fight didn't come in here trying to start a dumpster fire. I just got set off. My wick was lit, and again, Bart, my apologies for unloading on you like that.
It's fine.
It's cool.
It's fine.
We can all shake hands and be friends. McCabe Malafika for $5 Australian says, Mr. K, don't be offended. What if the tables were reversed and you were defending the validity of your field against the Reiki master?
Well, I'm there every day of the week, actually, on my other channel, because on my other channel, my take on nutrition science, such that it is that there is no nutrition science, because there is no experimental work in human nutrition anywhere in the literature. And everything that is put forward to us in terms of how we should eat and what we should avoid is completely arse about face with what our physiology actually tells us. Don't forget, firstly and foremostly, I'm a physiologist and a pathophysiologist who has branched out into nutrition in latter years. So that is absolutely my area. And I do have people coming in there telling me they know all about pathophysiology when they don't. So I absolutely understand what that is. I know it's a red rag to a bull, and I did it with malice aforethought, as said. So, here we go.
Okay. We've got Edgar Stanley, who has become a new member. Welcome to Scrappers. You can use the awesome emojis of Nathan Thompson in jail and the terrifying emoji of Team Skeptic in a mankini. Sorry about that. Draco Paul for $5 Canadian says, Bart...
no, you're not.
No, I'm not, sorry. Bart claimed oxygen molecules dimerize at low pressure. That goes against the Le Chantelier's principle he himself cited. The paper is nonsense. I think Bart did make the disclaimer many times that it's not his opinion. I think he is now well aware that all of the science in that paper, well, I can't even call it science, everything in that paper is just wrong. So wrong.
Could I also just say to that, Craig, that as part of my expertise in physiology, one of the things that we have to know absolutely is the mechanics of gas exchange and gas laws and all of that kind of stuff. It's to do with respiration, basically. So to suggest that I don't fully understand what the science is in that regard would be highly offensive to me if anybody did actually want to say that. As I said, you know,
well, I
probably
think,
a dozen times.
sorry.
I'm just repeating what the Connolly said. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, so dimerization and trimerization refer to the changes in infrared absorption as a result of collisions between 2 or 3 particles. So it's not so the process of dimerization is not so much related to what you just described. It's more to do with the spectrographic properties of the gas as a result of interparticle collisions. And indeed, it also depends, you know. So the greenhouse effect of carbon dioxide and water vapor is larger when you put them together, because when carbon dioxide molecules collide with water vapor molecules, they actually both absorb more efficiently. So you get a better result in terms of infrared absorption than if you just had the carbon dioxide on its own or the water vapor on its own. So it's at the what that dimer comment is not about your understanding of the gas laws, which I'm sure is fine. It's at the understanding of the spectroscopic properties of the gas as they undergo intermolecular collisions.
Of course. Absolutely, and the understanding there that what people need to understand as a physiologist is how do we, when we're measuring respiratory gases, how do we determine what the makeup of those gases are while we use spectrophotometers to do it. So we need to make all those adjustments so that we get it right as to what the carbon dioxide concentration in expired air is. But
those properties change.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on.
Go on.
No, go on.
Sorry, I did. And those properties change as a function of temperature and pressure.
Yes, they do. Really.
That's right. And that's what I think he was getting at was the dependency of these dimerization processes on temperature and pressure. Anyway, carry on.
Again, please don't take my presentation of what was said by those authors as my opinion. I've disclaimed several times that it is not. Okay, carry on.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Stringer News 1 for $5 says that Bart was acting exactly like a flat earther. Well done, FTFE. I think he's referring to the lack of having a claim yourself, which is what a lot of flat earthers do.
Yes, as I said, red rag to a bull on purpose. Malice aforethought. Yes, I did that absolutely.
Fair enough.
That was my goal.
Jessica G for $2 says, PhD Tony, that's a kill streak. Your Harrier strike is now available.
He watches me play COD. He doesn't know about kill streaks.
I do know. You sledged yourself. I was about to say all I know about kill streaks is because of watching you on COD, but there you go.
So you might see him get the drone every now and then, but not the rest of them.
All right.
J.L. Warren, one of my favourite people, says for $4.99, for someone trying desperately to separate himself from his source, he sure has gotten defensive. Methinks he doth protest too much.
I'm going to step in the way of this one. I feel like I did escalate and make this and put Bart in a position where he could feel emotionally threatened. And I should not have done that. It might have been good entertainment for everybody. I think it made sort of the stream more spectacular and more click-worthy. But I'm going to, I definitely put Bart on the defensive there by being unfair to him. So
we know you're a passionate man, Tony.
Up for that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to repeat what Yellow Ted said, but thank you, Tony, for that. Yeah, that's exactly what the situation was. Yeah, okay. I'm human as well.
Stringer News 1 for $5.
I understand.
Stringer News 1 for $5 says Bartnott may have the stones to stand by the nonsense he presented, but because he presented it, it should be his responsibility to defend it. Do you agree with that, Bart?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
No, I don't. Not at all. No.
McCabe Malafika.
My goal here was to invite the discussion.
Fair enough.
Not to defend anything. Yeah.
McCabe Malafika for $5 says, Kay, I've experienced firsthand how passionate Tony is about climate change. You said something wrong on the internet. Don't take it personally.
Hey, I'm the same in nutrition, mate.
Right, yeah. So Macabre and I got on the wrong side of one another, and he's a good bloke, but we got on the wrong side of one another in a climate debate, and it did go well. I've got a thin skin as far as this is concerned, but like this one, he was gracious enough to accept my apology for getting fired up. So,
right, and we've got the plot hole for $5. Get him, Tony, outside his area. Yet here he is commenting on the area. Shocking. J.L. Warren for $4.99 says something about lanes and I don't know, staying in them. Jessica, it just jumped on me. Jessica G for $2 says.
Yeah, I often said that, right? Sorry, Craig. I often say that to people that come and talk about nutrition, I often say to them, get back in your lane. So I know exactly where that comment comes from.
Yeah.
However, the role here today, among other things, was to be seen. And there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Fair enough. Now, as a nutritionist, what's your thoughts on my current choice to become a pescatarian?
I usually, I'm loath to give advice per se. What I do is talk about what the evidence suggests to us and what it doesn't suggest to us. And it seems pretty clear that the physiology and our genetic gift, our genetic history, I guess, all point in one direction, that there is one niche that human beings have evolved in, and it is actually hypercarnivore. And plant material is actually not appropriate for human beings at all. So I actually am in the camp of carnivores.
Okay.
And have been for more than 10 years.
I mean, I definitely like my meat, but I knew I was overweight. I gained a lot of weight after changing medication, after coming off of opioids for nearly a decade. And since I became a pescatarian, the only thing I've changed is my diet. I became a pescatarian, stopped eating other meats, and added a lot more vegetables. And I've lost nearly 2 stone in about 2 months.
Yeah, that will happen.
Yeah, I have a
There's
question
mechanism
for
why
the nutritionist.
Yeah, go on, team.
You are looking great, Craig.
Yeah.
I have
Thank you.
to say.
My question
Go on,
for
Tim.
you is that is my obsession with eating meat tubes a good thing or bad thing? Like, I don't eat a lot of vegetables. I only eat about a 3-pound hamburger meat
He's like
tube
60%
every
meat
day
tube.
and a half, or maybe a half pound and a half of, like, right now, just for me and my son, I just cooked 2.5 pounds of meat in the forms of tubes, and it was like all sausage. There's lots of grease, but my health is good. My doctor says my heart's good, so.
Yep. Meat is fantastic. Saturated fat is fantastic. Processed food, including processed sausages and processed meat, not so good. Back to Craig, there is a reason why when you change your diet in the way that you've described, that there will be a period of weight loss, which may or may not be maintained after that. We can talk about that privately at another stage if you like. But it's called the Randall cycle. We'll talk about that at another stage, though.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I know in myself, I feel healthier, and I've lost a lot of weight, and I needed to make a change, and I heard that it would help with weight loss, and also there is another aspect for it with me, and that I knew it would reduce my carbon footprint significantly, because although we are meat eaters, there's no denying the fact that large-scale agriculture and farming, and having so many animals that we have to have lots of land for, is a very, very large carbon footprint for every person. If you were to say change from eating a normal all-meat diet to just pescatarianism, from what I've read, it reduces your carbon footprint by within your diet-wise by up to 40%. If you were to become a full vegetarian, then it can actually reduce your carbon footprint by up to 90%. I understand that vegetarianism probably isn't the healthiest choice for a lot of people, but I also understand that the amount of meat that people eat is very detrimental to the environment. Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily. There is quite a bit of science around that which would seem to refute that, and that's covered on my channel about that topic at large. And also, people are free to go over there and ask me those questions over there, and I'll present that material over there.
Interesting. Okay. I don't want to bring up a large discussion about it, but just now that's just what I understood. Team?
I do want to point out I just coming on camera. Oh, whoa. Sorry, guys. Let me just going on camera just to show you I wasn't bullshitting about eating the meat tube tonight. This is one of 2 meat tubes that are going to have the pleasure of going down my goal. But I was being serious. Like, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, that meat tube, he probably just says that shit. No, I eat meat tubes, guys. So Sorry to interject on that.
Okay.
Okay, right, moving
Right,
on.
now think less of you as a human being, Tim.
Oh, you could think less of him? That's possible? Good lord.
Wow.
I see Crafty Keela in the chat also doesn't agree with me about the carbon footprint, and I'm open to discussion about that. It's just what I understand about the way that it works.
If I can interpose, the vast majority of the carbon footprint from meat farming actually comes from cows. So if you cut beef out of your diet, you're actually doing a significant amount of the work as far as reducing your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Chicken, lamb, etc. Have much less impact in terms of carbon footprint. But cows are basically walking swamps.
I've read also
in terms of methane emissions.
I've read also that chicken and poultry farming can be quite bad. Not necessarily gases or anything they put out, but because of the amount of feed that is required for all the chickens. And if you were to say use that land that is for farm to get the feed for chickens, and use that to instead grow something that humans could straight out eat, it would reduce the overall carbon footprint of the entire process. But again, I don't want to open up a can of worms right now.
But not by as much as the biggest gain that you can make is cutting down on beef consumption. That's the biggest carbon footprint gain that's available. Chicken, as you say, pretty much any animal. If the humans ate the feed instead of the animal, it would be a more efficient energy gain. Independent of subtleties of nutrient uptake, which I'm going to leave to Bart. But the biggest single change in terms of carbon footprint would actually be reducing our beef intake. And if you can do that, it ceases to be as much of a problem.
I mean, I also have read quite a lot of studies that refute the whole, methane from the cows being a big factor. But again, I don't know
I've
everything
seen those
about
too,
it.
and they're based on a fallacy. You can take the numbers and you can make them look like there's nothing that's there's nothing that's going on as a result of cows eating and burping meat. But the reality is that that's a statistical trick that they're playing. You need to insuring it against. They're doing an unfair comparison. If you do the comparison properly, you get you do get that it is a significant emission source.
Interesting. I think I'd like to learn a bit more about that. Crafty Keela,
Okay.
Bart, Tony, all of you can talk to me more about this. But personally, for me, becoming a pescatarian has been a great change, and
Yep.
I feel good about myself. I know I've got a lower carbon footprint, and I've lost weight, so I'm happy.
It would be
your
a lot
boobs
better
look
if we effectively domesticated fish rather than sort of plundering the ocean as though it was an unlimited resource, which it isn't. So we do need to be a bit more responsible in the way we go about collecting fish. But if you're sourcing your fish properly, then it's a great choice.
Cool.
No dramas.
All right, we got
And it's good for you. That's what counts.
Yeah. Jessica G for $2 says PhD Tony Stealth Bomber is now online, and then she says for another $2 your AC-130 is now available. Oh, you got the maximum kill streak. Cheesemondo for $10 says Bart found some info on the internet, doesn't understand it, can't explain or defend it, outraged because he's out of his depth and clueless. Bart's just here to build his channel. Bart?
That was one of my two goals, was to get some notoriety and get seen by some globe people. Yes, absolutely.
Hey, it's
And
what I
quite
did
clear
with
about that.
Non-Sequitur Show and stuff, putting yourself out there. It's the way to get noticed. And it's been an interesting
Hey,
discussion.
let me make a comment on that too. Let me make a comment on it too, because there's a lot of people out there that are very much against the way I feel about the anti-mask stuff. I'm very much a pro-mask person, and there's been a lot of my subscribers that said, hey, I don't agree with you on this. So there's going to be people that don't agree with you on this, but still your channel, I'm sure people should still give it a shot to check it out about the flat earth stuff. I know you said that's important, and this is a flat earth community. So definitely still go check them out and because I particularly enjoyed the conversation tonight. So
been a blooming roller coaster, that's for sure. Okay, so
It has.
and we've got J.L. Warren for $4.99. Stop requalifying yourself to avoid criticism of your position. I think Bart did more than enough time say that isn't the position that he necessarily holds. So, better charge for $5 New Zealand dollars says, so someone from 4 years ago didn't even believe their bullshit, and you come pushing it when they won't. Again, Bart, it's not his position, but yeah, the website and the paper, it's all bloody awful. McCaber Malafika for $2 Australian says, chat, Bart K has been a gentleman, please stop insulting him. You got a fan there, Bart?
Thank you.
Mabaza Richie for £5 says, how can you claim to be credible with a video like science is broken or scientists lie to you every day? Bart, I think that's at you.
Those two videos that are being referred to there are videos that he's referring or she is referring to by title only. Of course, titles are clickbaity things. Of course they are. And they are about specifically the area of nutrition science such that it exists in the current literature. And as I have alluded to earlier, nutrition science is a misnomer. It does not exist.
Okay.
Because science is experimental and interventional. There is no interventional experimental science on human beings with regard to nutritional needs. None at all. Because you cannot experiment on human beings. Ethics won't allow it. And so therefore we go off on correlations.
You're not supposed to experiment on humans? Guys, shut it down. We're not allowed to do this. No,
shut it down.
No, stop, put the scalpel down. Dave, I said put the scalpel down. Yeah, no. You hide the bodies and you get the bleach. Sorry, what were we saying?
Yeah, so, there are no experiments on human beings which would underpin any of our theories about human nutrition. It's all correlational based. It's all epididly-doodly-moodly-mology, and that's not science. Sorry.
Fair enough. Gently's channel for £5 says that he's going to keep that paper close to Riley's thesis next to the toilet. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Then we got another channel member, Alien X Gaming, has become a fighter. You can use the awesome emojis of Nathan Thompson in jail and the one of Team Skeptic in a mankini if you want to damage your eyes, I guess. Better charge for $5 New Zealand dollars says, so you come to debate with something you don't know or believe, winner there, just sub-hunting. I think Bart's made it clear that he's trying to make himself known.
I asked for a discussion, not a debate. I even sent an email to everyone saying I'm looking for a discussion here, boys.
Fair enough.
Not a debate.
Yeah, okay. I just want to bring up something. Professor Phil Bell mentions that there has been some significant work on nutrition by CSIRO. Who do a lot of work on sort of agricultural produce and making it more efficient and more helpful for human beings. So perhaps there might be some stuff there on analysing the health outcomes from differing nutritional intakes.
Yeah, look, it sounds like I need to qualify my statement there earlier, and the statement is this. People are running around making claims about what is good for us long term in our diets. There are people running around saying, if you do this in your diet, it will reduce your risk of this outcome across the lifespan. Okay? There are no experimental, interventional research studies where human beings have been locked in a lab and controlled appropriately, remotely enough to be able to establish cause and effect in terms of nutrition for human beings and human health outcomes. Those studies do not exist. That's what I'm saying.
So can I comment on that? That sounds suspiciously like the criticism of scientific methodology that flat earthers often suggest, that that current scientific understanding hasn't properly defined their experiment. They haven't defined their independent variable. They haven't established the controls on that sort of thing. It sounds a little bit like it's down that path. Would you care to respond to that?
Yeah. The response to that is very, very simple. Triangles are real, Tony. They have never been debunked. The Earth is an oblate spheroid.
So,
We need nothing more than triangles to establish that. Nothing more is required than triangles.
that's true. So
Triangles
Phil
are
Bell is
irregular
saying that
shapes.
apparently this. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go
on.
I'm
I'm
done.
sorry,
I was
Phil Bell.
just reiterating what-
Yeah. Okay, so Phil Bell says that there have been studies on humans in isolation conducted by CSIRO. So perhaps you might.
but
Perhaps you
not
should talk to
adequately
Phil Bell
tenured.
in the chat.
Well, perhaps it's, the studies that exist are not adequately tenured to extrapolate the conclusions that these authors often make and that the general public make on the basis of vox pop reporting on the nutritional pseudoscience.
Well,
I don't know
that's
what is Phil Bell's area of expertise, by the way. I don't even know who Phil Bell is.
He put someone on the moon.
So Phil Bell is he's a rocket scientist. He works with the Indian space program, but he's got a lot of scientific connections through the Indian community, and he's working in close cooperation with Indian educational institutions and the Indian Space Agency, whose official name I don't know. I'm hoping it's the Indian Space Agency, because otherwise I'm in trouble. So he and this may well be part of what he's suggesting, because there have been nutritional studies, for instance, as part of the establishment of space programs and that sort of thing, that do look at the nutritional needs, because obviously if you're transporting stuff into orbit, you need to know whether or not it's necessary, what its effects are, and that sort of thing. So there had, and Phil is getting quite passionate.
I see that.
About he is in the chat. About the CSIRO. For those of you who aren't Australians, the CSIRO is the Commonwealth Science and Industry Research Organisation, and they're a government-run organisation that does research into science and industry, as their name suggests, because one of our largest industries has always been agriculture. They have done a lot of fundamental work on agricultural science and nutrition as part of that.
Okay. Let me invite
I would suggest that you.
Sorry, I think you guys have Professor a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, okay. Professor Bell, you are cordially invited to come and talk to me about nutrition science on my nutrition-based channel anytime you like. You can get my email address from Craig if you like. I'd be more than happy to host you.
I'll pass that on to Professor Phil Bell for you, no worries.
Very good. Okay.
All right. Okay, moving on. Now we got to Alien X Gaming for $10 says, thank you to my favorite Flat Earth debunkers. You guys rock. I appreciate everything you do. The community you guys bring together is awesome. So thank you to all in the community. I absolutely agree. I absolutely fucking love this community. You guys are all amazing. I mean, there's team, but the rest of you are amazing. He's quiet. He's
there are now some CSI jokes.
Yeah.
CSIRO. Anyway.
It's all right, team. We just
Did somebody say something about me?
It's all right. Go back to sleep.
No, yeah, because I was reconnecting because I was getting like a 700 millisecond delay, and it was really it's really long.
No.
But I reconnected, and it's much quicker now. What was the joke? Tell me the fucking joke.
It says the community you guys bring together is awesome, so thank you and all the community. That was Alien X Gaming, and I said I agree. The community is awesome. Well, there's team, but the community is awesome.
Yeah, there's me. I'm amazing. The rest of you guys are just awesome.
That's what your mum told you. Your mum sat you down every day and said, "You're special. You're special, little team. You're special." And
damn straight.
And what you didn't realize is when you left the room, she went, "He's special, all right."
That's fucked up.
You know I love you.
But only because it's true.
NA for $6.66 says YouTube is censoring my comments. Hail Satan. Hail Sagan. Commander Darklight for $22.99 Australian, just because. Thank you very much, and I hope your health is doing better, Commander Darklight. Diabetic Warslug for $5 says, what a roller coaster. Civilized, dumpster fire, then civilized. I love it. Stringer News 1 for $2 says, so scurvy is A-OK? Shake my head. And then Stringer News 1 for $5 says, Tony, Texas puts out more methane from petroleum well leakage than all the cows in the world, and they have a lot of cattle. That's interesting. Tony, did you hear that?
Sorry. No, I had my headphones off just as I was sitting down. Texas puts out more meat.
More methane from petroleum well leakage than all the cows in the world.
Yeah, that's true too. And
that's not good.
it's one of the No, it isn't good. One of the things that I haven't yet touched on that I feel like I should is that we're so far in this discussion we've sort of pretended like our anthropogenic climate change is the only game in town. And the possibility exists that there are significant positive feedback events. For instance, if you raise the temperature enough, you'll melt the permafrost in Siberia, Canada, and Alaska and get a huge methane surge out of that. Or you'll raise temperature on the ocean floor and the clathrate sediments that are currently there will release their methane, and that will provide a positive feedback. Or you can get dramatic changes in albedo as a result of deforestation or whatever, or you can get dramatic large-term ecosystem collapse, in which case the plants all fall over and the animals die and they all start rotting and releasing carbon dioxide / methane that had previously been. So what's happening, and those are I've just listed 4 feedback mechanisms that we're aware of. Okay, and there is a possibility that there are mechanisms we're unaware of. So we are driving at a high speed through a minefield at a brick wall. It is in what we are doing is in the way we are releasing carbon dioxide at the moment is so incredibly irresponsible. It is difficult to contemplate.
Isn't today Earth Day?
Really.
Isn't today Earth Overshoot Day? The day where we've already reached the year's the resources given to us for the year. We've already gone past that point, and now we're just kind of working on credit and pumping more crap out.
I hadn't heard that, but yeah, that would be very likely. The risks involved in this, and the more you learn, the more terrifying this becomes. And it's very difficult to maintain dispassion when you spend a lot of time severely depressed as a result of just looking at children going into food courts and knowing that we're fucking them over as far as our policy decisions are concerned. This is just a really serious problem, and I apologise for being a bit of a bummer there, but not everything can be giggles and lollipops.
So I wanted to bring up something I saw, I believe, on 60 Symbols, which is a really popular physics channel to check out. They were talking about climate change, and it was one of the first points you brought up with that we have a equilibrium of energy coming in versus energy going out. And so we'll always have that equilibrium at some point because it just has to match. It has that we're getting some energy from the sun, we're putting energy back out into space, and that will be at an equilibrium. It's about what, minus 18 degrees Celsius, correct? That's what it, Tony?
Yep.
Isn't that what it is at the equilibrium line? Yeah. So essentially what we do, one of the other feedback loops is by a lot of these processes that are happening due to anthropogenic climate change also reduce the planet's ability to reabsorb the carbon dioxide in the air. So this carbon dioxide is not, this carbon is something that was on the Earth in physical form, and we've now put it on the Earth in like air form. So what we're essentially doing is by adding more and more and more carbon dioxide and reducing the ability for the Earth to reabsorb that carbon dioxide, essentially adding more to the atmosphere, what we'll do is we'll drive that line further and further away from the surface of the Earth. So it begins to push the
that's right.
atmospheric line where the negative 18 degrees is. It pushes that up a little bit more, and then in turn, that's more atmospheric molecules on top of you, increasing the pressure and temperature down at the surface of the Earth, enforcing the feedback loop even more. That's what happened to Venus, I believe, is what they said.
Yeah, so Venus was a case of runaway greenhouse. We're not really going to get there for another billion years or so until the sun gets a lot warmer. But then we pass what's called the Kobayashi-Ingersoll limit. That's where runaway greenhouse can happen. But yeah. Anyway.
Right. Moving on, we've got a couple more super chats. Mabaza Ritchie for £5 says, Bart, why do you claim to be a nutritionist if you don't believe it to be real? You sound really flat earthery in your reasoning.
A nutritionist, by definition, is one who studies nutrition, which I do in great depth. That's what the term means. That's the definition of what it is. What I'm saying is not real is the idea that we have a lot of really good science underpinning our ideas about what is good for human beings nutritionally. My whole barrow is on the actual lack of empirical, interventional, scientific evidence behind any of the claims made by the powers that be, who tell us what is good for us to eat and not.
Okay, fair enough.
Pretty much the answer. Yep.
Can I ask a question? Do you consider yourself a pseudoscientist?
Do I consider myself a pseudoscientist? No, I rail against pseudoscience, actually, in my areas of expertise, in my lanes. My lanes being physiology for human beings, pathophysiology for human beings, and I've got the side interest now in the physics of why the Earth is round. It's not an area of expertise. It's a new channel, but please go and have a look. Give me some feedback if I've got anything wrong over there.
No, the reason why I asked the question is because earlier you said that there is no such thing as human nutrition science because they're not doing any kind of studies on actual human beings. So for you to say you're a nutritionist kind of puts you in the realm of people who study that pseudoscience, which was by your definition, not mine.
What was my definition? Sorry, team, try me again. I missed the last.
That the nutritional science is not science. There is no such thing as human nutritional science.
Yeah, there's what I'm saying. Let me be very clear and explicit once again. What I'm saying is there is no remotely adequate, controlled, interventional, scientific investigation into the nutritional needs of human beings long term.
What would the independent
throughout the lifespan?
But then you just said you're also a nutritionist, though. So that would mean that you're in that field of study that...
Right. One who studies what's available there and one who contributes to that literature such that it is by way of my publication history in that area. There's a difference between experimental, empirical, controlled science and study of an area. They're not the same thing necessarily. That's the distinction I'm making.
Would you consider Anthony Riley a scientist in the field of relative density?
No, because I don't think he studies
but you
anything.
think relative density is, just as much of a bullshit science as human nutrition, because you say it doesn't actually exist. No real science actually exists for it.
What I'm saying.
I'm putting those in the same realm via your definition.
What I'm saying to you to delineate those things is that there is nothing by way of inference to support relative density as a thing. It's just nonsense from start to finish. Okay, there are inferences available in nutrition science. What I'm talking about is the veracity of many of those inferences being a lot poorer than what we're made out to believe that they are. And I'm pointing to Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
So is your position better explained by that you don't think the entire field of nutritional science is bunk? You just think that a majority of people who talk nutritional science are actually fraudulent individuals making false claims?
Okay, some people who are acting in the field of nutrition are acting fraudulently, are acting misanthropically, are acting by virtue of being encouraged to act the way they act for financial gain. Yes, those people exist. Absolutely. I'm not saying the whole field is fraudulent with malice aforethought. What I'm saying is that there are many people who are misguided as to the veracity of many of the claims made by nutrition science on the basis that they don't actually meet the standard that we as scientists would put upon having quite that level of surety about cause and effect. This causes that. If you do this, then you can expect that as an outcome. I'll give you, just so you can know that, I'll give you an exact example. Okay, we are told day in and day out that if you eat a bunch of saturated fat, you will get clogged arteries, you will get a heart attack, and you're going to die early. That's what we're told.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's no evidence to support that. There never has been.
Yeah. So I'm going to step in to back that up here, because the there was a big point. There was a big push and a big thing about polyunsaturated fats, and the research that led us there was research that monounsaturated fats were actually bad for you, and people said, "Oh well, polyunsaturated fats must be good for you," and that turns out not to be the case. The argument is actually not whether it's monounsaturated or polyunsaturated, it's whether or not it's saturated or not. And the right fats in the right diet are actually good for you. And there's a famous case from South America, actually, of a South American tribe near Tierra del Fuego who ate seals all the time, raw. And that was all they ate. They didn't eat vegetables. They got all of the vitamins they needed from eating seals. And Westerners showed up, made them adopt a Western diet, and they were no longer able to maintain the energy balance that would keep them well. And they ended up not prospering. So there are still open questions about the balance of fats and what their roles are. It's like the discussion about cholesterol. We now understand that there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and we're improving our understanding all the time.
No, sorry. There's just cholesterol. It's neither good nor bad.
Okay. All right.
That's another fact.
I have a question for you from Phil Bell. Okay.
Yep.
I have a question for you from Phil Bell. Do you believe that homeopathy is an effective form of health treatment?
No, I do not. No.
Okay. All right. Phil was just interested and asked me to ask you. So, all right.
Yeah. No. Not at all, in my opinion.
Certainly an interesting discussion, and I'm going to get Phil Bell to contact Bart so that they can set up a discussion, because Phil Bell seems quite animated and passionate about the things he's saying. So yeah, I'll definitely try and set that up.
I have a question.
Go on then.
I have a question. One of the things that I get tested for when I go see my doctor is my LDL and HDL cholesterol levels. What's the difference between the two if there's only one form of cholesterol?
Okay, cholesterol is a molecule which has a certain series of atoms in it. You go and look in any biochemistry textbook you like, and you will only find one form of cholesterol. That's all there is. The HDL and LDL, the medical profession will usually refer to that as we're testing your cholesterol. Or they'll say HDL cholesterol, LDL cholesterol. The HDL and LDL are different forms of transporters for cholesterol and other lipids, as it turns out. They are synthesized under the instruction of your genes, and they are synthesized at the exact rate and proportions and numbers that are best conducive to maintaining your health, given the situation in which your genes find themselves at that time. We have survived 350,000 years as our current speciation, that being Homo sapiens sapiens, and we've done that pretty much entirely without the help of any medical professionals or any dangerous contraindicated poisons such as statins, for example.
What?
Every single
Can I make
lipoprotein cholesterol water that exists for a reason. It has a job to do. There is no good and bad cholesterol. There are no good and bad ratios. The stuff that they're talking about there is all associations between heart disease and various biomedical readings in the bloods. They are associations, and they're poor associations at best. They are not causal, and they're not even strong associations. It's utter nonsense, and it's all underpinned by money from drug companies.
Can I say that for the large portion of that 350,000 years that you were talking about, life expectancies were significantly lower than they are now.
Thank you.
And a large portion of the difference in that life expectancy is because of the intervention of medical professionals to prevent adverse outcomes from befalling us. So the argument that you just presented about the natural body's response to these elements in our nutrition doesn't seem to me to be that strong an argument.
Okay. Tony, could you comment at all on the prevalence of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease over the last 100 years? Not mortality, because obviously medical intervention can lengthen lifespan, can stave off death, yes, absolutely, but following gold standard advice to avoid saturated fat and cholesterol containing foods for the last 100 years basically, what has that done to our prevalence of heart disease?
I don't know. I'm going to
It's gone up
accept that
and up and up and up.
Yes, but the association with that is so this is a situation where actually I would be listening to epidemiologists who study these sorts of trends in enormous detail.
Okay, yes, I would, and what I would also add to that is you are now in my lane. Okay, I have an in-depth professional knowledge of cardiovascular pathophysiology, the exact underpinning mechanisms of these processes. I understand intimately in great detail. That's what my thesis is in, Tony. Okay, so
I hope. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to say that I hope that my question came across as respectful of your expertise, because I did not mean in any sense to be disrespectful.
Okay. So the answer is it's a throw-out statistic, because that's what we do in these kind of discussions. You can say, well, here's a starting point. Has heart disease gone down? No. Okay. So from there we can then get into a whole discussion about what the actual cause of atherosclerosis heart disease is. That's probably a discussion that's best had over there on my channel, where I've been for several years already, and there are more than 35 videos up on my channel already that cover this in absolute detail. So I would suggest to people that want to know about the pathophysiology of atherosclerosis that's where they go and find that out. And, that's an area that I have contributed to the peer-reviewed literature, and I have a significant list of publications in cardiovascular pathophysiology specifically. So that's where you go for that information.
Okay.
I had another question for Bart. Do you agree with the use of vaccines?
Oh, come on, Bart.
I generally say no. But you need to understand why I say no. It's around an ethical thing. I'll phrase this by way of asking you a question. Do you think, Tony, that the needs of any one individual outweigh the needs of the many?
No.
Okay. Are there too many people on the planet?
Possibly. That's a difficult question to answer.
It is, isn't it? The whole thing is very difficult. Here's my take on it. It seems to me that the use of vaccines, while they protect individuals, and sure, large numbers of individuals, absolutely, what they also do is they cause those pathogenic organisms to evolve more rapidly than they otherwise would, because only the strongest ones survive and continue on. So,
Okay.
to me, it's not about do vaccines work. It's not about are vaccines a good thing or a bad thing in that respect. It's a wider view around should we intervene in this way?
Of course we fucking should.
Well, if that's your opinion, that's fine.
Well, no, it's an absolute fact. Of course we could. Saying that there is too many people on the planet isn't necessarily true. There is too many people using resources in the wrong way. Right? We can absolutely survive as a species if we have a massive paradigm shift and change the way that we are. So saying that, oh no, having a vaccine is actually going to force a virus to evolve more is complete and utter nonsense. Vaccines do one thing, and that is make adults. Vaccines are not dangerous, and having a vaccine it's an act of compassion because it's not about you, it's about everybody else, and it can save millions and millions of lives. Anybody, I'm sorry Bart, but anybody who is in any way against vaccines is a fucking idiot.
I didn't say I was against.
Yes, you did.
I just want to say something else. The suggestion that human intervention encourages the relevant pathogens to evolve into more effective forms is contraindicated by the results. We don't see mumps or measles evolving into more effective forms. They are well kept under control by the vaccines currently in use. So I would suggest that the evidence does not support your assertion in that regard.
Not in the
would you
agree?
Hang on. Would you make the same claim about the class of pathogens known as coronaviruses at large? Why would you say that, Craig?
Certainly.
Because there's no evidence to suggest that vaccines have caused coronaviruses to evolve more rapidly. There is no evidence to suggest that at all. A natural mutation of viruses is something that is going to happen anyway, and there is absolutely zero evidence ever to suggest that having a vaccine would cause the virus to mutate more quickly. That it's just complete and utter dangerous nonsense. I'm sorry, Bart, but no. Anyone that is against vaccines in any way, in the slightest, is a fucking idiot.
I'm not against.
And let me also speak on that, Bart. Let me also speak about that real quick, because sometimes a virus doesn't mutate to become stronger. It mutates to more effectively defend itself against the vaccine or make itself able to still exist inside of someone who has the vaccine. So not all the times is the mutation going to be a more powerful mutation. It may be a sideways mutation. So the argument that you're giving is not necessarily a strong one, nor is it absolutely correct.
I didn't say it was either strong or absolutely correct in every case. I said, here's a possibility. Have we thought about this possibility?
Yep.
It's a question.
It's been thought about. It's been thought about quite a lot, Bart. I'm sorry, but you started with when we asked you. Sorry, Tony, one sec. When Tony asked, are you against vaccines? Hold on. When Tony said, are you against vaccines? You started with not completely. I'm sorry, but that was the wrong answer. The only correct answer to that question should be no. Vaccines are absolutely fine. Yes, there are fucking wrong answers. No, Bart, shut up. There are wrong answers, and a lot of the things that you have said tonight are wrong answers. Oh, I think he either left or...
he may have done.
He may be the worst nutritionist I've ever heard of.
So I want to give credit to Phil Bell, who suggested the do you agree in vaccines question, which I have to say didn't occur to me. It didn't occur to me to ask him that, but his answer was kind of indicative. We do have, because of the Quality of Fights channel, let me just put that plug in there, and I've lost him. But there was a cellular biologist with it, Davey C412, cell biologist with a PhD. Vaccines don't cause evolution against vaccines. He's confusing vaccines and antibiotics. It's
Yeah.
and thanks to the chat. So a lot of the chat were able to go. I didn't know that the Connollys had set up their own website. That was fed to me from the chat.
That's like a family bloody website.
Oh.
Peer review my fucking swollen
so-
testicles.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that the people that I've been bringing up recently, that dissident science, his name's like David DeHilster or some DeHilster, and he references his brother's book, and he references him by name, like, oh, and it was masterfully done by this person who has been published.
Yep.
All their publications, all their peer review is done by each other. They peer review each other. That's
Peer
like,
review.
you can't do that. That's not peer review.
Yep.
It's like open peer review
Yep.
is not the same thing. Why have scientists not refuted it? Well, the same reason why scientists don't go out of their way to refute flat Earth. Nothing is peer reviewed
Yep.
about flat Earth, nor could they ever get a peer review to begin with, because there's so many flaws in the, like, you can't come to the conclusion the Earth is flat if you take everything into account. And sorry guys, but
Yep.
scientists who peer review shit take everything into account and try to
Yeah.
replicate your fucking findings. And I guarantee you they don't, or they won't. That's why nothing gets peer reviewed there.
So this is and I apologise because I did get fired up, and I will
You're a
take it on
passionate
the
man,
chin.
Tony. That's cool.
Yeah.
We're used to that kind of thing around here. I have Team as a partner. What do you think happens?
Well, Team, I think, on the basis of recent evidence, you get fired up a bit more than Team does at the moment. Team can sort of zone out and keep himself. You and I are the ones that sort of strain at the leash, slavering at interlopers.
To be honest, I was looking for, relevant questions to ask, and I was trying to pay attention as much as possible to both arguments. And like I said, I have a little bit different take on the climate scientists or science. I think that it's almost too complicated to really discuss. It's like, if you're not someone like Tony, who has a PhD in geophysics, or someone who's a climate scientist, then you're really probably going to be out of your realm trying to speak about it, because you're going to be missing something so easy and obvious. The stuff he brought to the table was it was poorly researched on his behalf, because
Dangerous.
once we started asking him questions, or once you started asking questions, he didn't know how to answer the questions. He only said, hey, go check out the paper. I think there's some questions to be answered here. And that's fine, but when you have a PhD geophysicist who's trying to answer those questions, you're not really in a position to refute what he's saying. So, there's that. You won. Easy win, I guess.
Yeah.
And we're counting him as one of the rage quits, right?
I think so, yeah. At this stage, it looks like it. But to me, one of the telling factors was the similarity between him and the tactics used by flat earthers, right? The sort of here's this new scientific principle that mainstream science hasn't bothered to debunk yet. Yes, we haven't bothered to debunk that because it's utter crap from beginning to end. And using spurious correlations, like he put up the correlation between pressure and molar density. That's the basis of the ideal gas law, which underpins our understanding of how hydrostatic atmospheres work. The atmosphere is, there are small term oscillations, dynamic, short and small length scale deviations, but on the larger scale, it's in hydrostatic equilibrium. It's a fluid in hydrostatic equilibrium, just like the ocean. And the ideal gas law plays a vital component in relating temperature to pressure, and molar density just drops out as a function of that. His entire argument was just, if what you were talking about, it was specious nonsense from beginning to end.
I'm pretty sure that he
Yeah, and
believes
let me
everything
clarify,
he said tonight.
when I w- when I was bringing up the how it doesn't apply was mainly towards the flat Earth explanation of saying, you know, when they try to bring up the ideal gas law, like it doesn't apply here, you know, because if we saw that, we would see an increase in temperature and pressure, which we don't see. But as a whole, the atmosphere it does generally follow the ideal pressure or the ideal gas law.
Yep,
Yeah, you're right.
exactly. Yep, and
I,
so it's just it just frustrated me listening to him, and knowing, well, okay, what you just said is nonsense, but then you proceed for another 20 minutes before I get a chance to respond. I'm going to get frustrated in that 20 minutes, and people have noted that I uncorked a bottle of scotch. Yes, I did,
Yeah,
because
I
I
heard
needed to
that.
get my blood pressure back down, because I was really, really upset. Because, like I say, I consider flat earthers are harmless and funny, right, to some extent. Yes, they're a gateway drug to other conspiracy theories, but ultimately, they're not dangerous. Climate science misinformation is dangerous, as is the anti-vaxxer misinformation that he then graduated to.
Yeah, and I just want to address someone in the
Yeah,
chat
and
quickly.
go
Carl
ahead.
Champion, who says, "So you're all happy to get an untested vaccine?" Of course not. That's fucking stupid. Who'd take an untested vaccine? But every single vaccine, at
Yep.
least in the
Yeah.
UK and in America, undergoes rigorous rounds of testing for months and months and months
Yep.
before it's, sometimes years before it's deemed safe. No, of course I wouldn't take an untested vaccine because that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, and
Yes.
along those lines, when you can't be kinda against vaccines, that's something you can't be.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you're kinda against vaccines, then you're against vaccines, and there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. You know, like you can't. You know, that's a dangerous topic for him to be discussing too. That's why I said we don't platform people like that without addressing them. We're not giving them a place to speak. We're giving them a
Yeah.
place to say stuff where we can easily debunk the shit out of them and say, look, you're wrong. So when someone goes, yeah, I'm an anti-vaxxer, somebody who's seen this video or seen a future video can say, yeah, go watch this debate between this doctor and, you know, this jackass over here who's an anti-vaxxer. Like, those people are dangerous.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I considered, sort of, I considered this, you guys leapt on him at exactly the right time and drove him off. But I considered this to be quite sinister.
Yeah, no, I
he
agree.
was using your platform to try and backdoor his noxious anti-science
Yeah.
and try and get exposure and publicity.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, guys, but I want to be very clear. In my opinion, that guy is a pseudoscientist. He,
Oh, yeah, I nailed it when I asked him that. Do you consider yourself a pseudoscientist?
even in his own field, he is a fucking pseudoscience. And I don't know why he thinks he's got any place trying to debunk flat Earth when he can't even get the things that he is apparently an expert in right. Now, I'm going to read the last few super chats and we're going to get out of here for tonight.
Okay.
And we got Rampant for 1,000 claps. Came late. How much did the dumpster burn? It burned quite brightly, actually. And then Jezekai, ex-Jezekai for $2 says he has a Thanos complex. Sigh. No, he's just got a fucking being an idiot complex. The plot hole for $5 says
No,
Bart.
he wants to kill people. He wants to kill people to pull the population down.
Yeah, true.
That was the subject of what he was saying.
Yeah. Well, basically, there's too many people.
Yeah.
All right, Thanos, chill out. The plot hole for $5 says, Bart, if we have too many people, according to you, see yourself out, along with whatever percent of the pot to get us back on track. Yeah. And then Cooked Deborah D for $2 Australian says, Bart lost his job as an academic, point and laugh. We always point and laugh at idiots, and I think he's one of them. And then Rampant for 2,500 claps says, as a physician, anti-vaxxers just piss me off. Vaccines are among the greatest achievements of humanity, and anyone who doesn't endorse them is trash. 100%. I'm sorry.
Oh,
but
that is so well said.
As soon as he said, oh, well, kind of, like I was like, no, fuck you, you're getting the FTFE treatment. And then last one, Mabaza Ritchie for £2 says, read my name slowly in a Scottish accent. Mabaza Ritchie. My balls are itchy.
My balls are itchy.
I had to say it in a Scottish accent and then I got it. Yes.
It worked.
Brilliant.
Yes, it worked.
Thank you, my balls are itchy.
Okay.
Oh, right.
My balls are itchy.
Guys, I've had great fun tonight. It's been different. It's been a roller coaster. It's been emotional, and I hope everyone's enjoyed tonight. Tony, thank you for coming on and lending your expertise once again. Always a pleasure to have you on the channel. Show yourself
my
out.
pleasure to be here. Thank you. Shall do. I'll make sure not to put my bum print on your door. I'll be careful of that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And team, thank you for being here as always. The show's always better when you're here, unless you show your face.
Yeah, I had a good time tonight. I didn't think the conversation was too bad until the very end. So, what I want to say that my favorite part about this entire debate, okay, was after they had both got done presenting, and he was telling Tony how eloquent his presentation was and how much of a wonderful man he was, and Tony came in with, now I'm here to take care of that fucking bullshit you said, because that's utter fucking nonsense. It's like, yes, Tony just totally shit on his own fucking how good he looks. But no, I think it made you look even better, man. That was fucking amazing.
I love having
one of my
Tony.
favorite parts by far.
Yeah. That was a very, very good debate. I really, really enjoyed that. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you all for all the super chats, everyone. And I know not everyone can support me financially. If you do want to help the channel, the best way that you can do that is to share my stuff on social media, Facebook and Twitter and all the good stuff. And I really, really appreciate all the support. You guys in the chat are the real MVP. Later on this week, I'm going to have a new episode of Flerfs Are Idiots. And then Friday we'll be starting my 40-hour stream. Team?
I was going to say, do you want to do like a 30 minute to 60-minute after show?
I really need to go to bed. But you know what? You know what? I can do 30 minutes. Yeah.
No?
No.
Okay. I mean, if you need to go to bed, then, close your eyes, little baby.
Just I know that my kids get up to go to school in about 3.5 hours, but fuck it.
Don't worry about it. Seriously, if you
I don't feel ready for bed, so maybe a 30-hour wind down little gaming session would be good. So guys,
who are Robert Carter and Georgia Purdom?
No idea.
Yeah, somebody, the Firestarter Man, is suggesting that I debate them.
Firestarter Man, send me an email at fighttheflatter@gmail.com and I'll try and sort that out. But guys, thank you very much for tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure streaming for you as always. We should be back on Team's channel tomorrow night with a Flat Earther coming on. I'm trying to make them come. Yes, Tony?
One last thing that I need to mention. Professor Phil Bell has set up a Discord channel where you can come along, and he's going to present lectures in chemistry, physics, mathematics. I and a bunch of other creators are helping out. It's called Ask a Scientist.
We should get Jam Troop on.
We had he started it up just last night, and I spent the first 30 minutes of its existence shouting at a flat earther, but that's the way it goes. But anyway, yes.
Stick that in the
have
chat,
a question,
Phil Bell, totally.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Just wanted to sneak that in. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you very much, guys. Back on Team's channel tomorrow, and we'll be over on Team Skeptic after dark in the 5-10 minutes. Thank you again, everyone. It's been an amazing stream. And Bart, you have become a member of this community, but probably not in the way that you wanted. So, yeah, I think I might be doing a debunk video on some of your fucking nonsense. Remember, guys, stupidity is not a right. Fight the flat earth. Fight the flat. Fight the flat.
Fight the flat earth.
Fight the flat. Fight the flat. Fight the flat. Fight the flat. Fight the flat.
Hey Tony, if you want to stick around for the after show and just because I'm gonna have the chatbot lady on, so
Okay. Why not?
I'll
I'm
just
not actually.
put it to
you
where you
know,
guys.